And we ask that you not use the chat function to chat amongst yourselves because it's not part of the public record and it's very distracting for us. So, agenda item number 1, emergency evacuation procedures. In each corner of the back of the room, there are doors to exit the building in case of an emergency, and you would simply exit those doors and go either left or right to get to the outside of the building. Are there any additions, deletions, or changes in the order of agenda items?
Yes, I would like to suggest that we move the minutes to before item number 8 because Jim will be recused for item number 8.
Okay. Do we need to vote on that?
Nope.
Okay. I have no problem with that. Any other additions, deletions, or changes? No. Okay. Any announcements?
This is Jim's last meeting.
Jim Langan, we will miss you. You've been a great contributor, and it's been fun. It's been fun. Yeah, it's been good to have you on board, and good luck to you. We will miss you.
Oh, thank you, Don.
Any other announcements? Okay, are there any comments or questions from the public that are not related to the agenda tonight? Hearing none, let's move on to number 5 on the agenda, which is our first project. And this is a continued final plat application, which means it's kind of the last stage of a review of a project before the board makes a decision about it. It's the continued final plat application, pardon me, number SD 2205 of O'Brien Farm Road, LLC, for the next phase of a previously approved master plan for up to 490 dwelling units and non-residential space as allowable in the zoning district. The phase consists of 2 5-story multifamily residential buildings on lots 13 and 15 with a total of 251 dwelling units, 1,219 square feet of commercial space, and associated site improvements at 255 Kennedy Drive. Are there any recusals or disclosures? I will disclose that I own a property at Hillside at O'Brien Farm, but I don't believe it will impair my ability to be objective. Okay, who is here for the applicant? Who are here? Who is here? I don't know.
Evan Langfield with O'Brien Brothers.
Hi, Evan.
Andrew Gill with O'Brien Brothers.
Hi, Andrew.
Evan, is your mic on? Is there a green light or is it just...
There's a green light on there. Can you hear me?
Yep, it was just a little far away. Pull it a little closer.
Good to see you all in person. It's been a while.
Yes, welcome. So we have the staff report, and I understand that you have submitted some comments in response to the staff report. So rather than ask you to give like an introduction, I would suggest, unless board members feel otherwise, that we just go through the staff report and you can make your comments applicable to each comment as they come up.
Yeah, I think we were hoping that as part of this, we might be able to play a little presentation that we prepared, because I think some of the discussions are revolving around the architecture piece, and so
Okay.
we're just trying to provide a little bit of context,
Okay.
which
Yep,
we thought
so
may
we
not
have
be.
that available.
Okay.
And so our thinking was that if the board doesn't have any questions about the architecture, making a presentation on it is not a productive use of time. So we thought start with the staff report, see where the board is, and then if you feel like your presentation would help answer the board's questions, then we'll go through it.
I'd be kind of interested in seeing the architecture presentation,
Yeah.
to tell you the truth, because relative actually to what I was commenting on before, which is I just realized a little late how massive these buildings are.
Yep.
And
And I think the staff report starts with discussion. Oh, it starts with traffic, but then after that we go into the appearance of the buildings and open space. So
What do other folks think? Mark, you're the architect.
I could go either way, honestly. I mean, I think that, I think that there are some important issues outside of the architecture that especially more to relate to open space. I think like the traffic and other things like that are more like what I call the boilerplate that we just need to work through. So I could either go through it one by one or have them present it, but I think that we may bounce around a little if we do that. So I'm not sure if we at least knock off, low hanging fruit and then focus on because I think pretty much for me, it's architecture and open space. It comes
Okay.
down to when I
Right.
reviewed the staff comments.
Well, and just to be clear, the presentation also touches on the open space and amenities too.
Do we want to sort of look at which staff comments are, just the ones where you guys can say, yeah, we'll do that, or yeah, we agree, and then we'll focus on the harder ones as a group, or do we,
Right?
So I think that our intent was to get through that presentation in under 10 minutes. It includes like a 2-minute virtual video that we had made of the project site.
All right.
Dan has his hand up as well. Dan, if you want to just
didn't
jump
see
in, you don't need to put your hand up. You're a board
I
member.
don't see, where's Dan? I don't see him.
Yeah, our view here, Dan, doesn't show hands, so
Okay.
only
Oh, okay.
Delilah is looking at hands.
Who's it? 10?
Right.
Oh, doesn't Delilah have a buzzer under the chair's seat? So
Yeah, so
okay.
Delilah does, but anyway, just jump in. You're a board member. You're fully entitled.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I guess it would be nice to see their presentation. It's sort of similar to introductory remarks
Okay,
of a project, so that's my
Yeah.
feeling, so.
let's
Yeah,
go
and
with
that
it.
way, if when we get to the staff comments that address, we can say, yeah, we agree.
It'll be
with the-
context.
Right.
Okay,
Okay.
go for it, guys.
I guess so.
That'd be great. Yeah, I can. I don't have the ability to
We
flip
have
slides
it.
or whatever,
It's just
but I can just kind of.
146 megs, so it's going to take her a second to
Is
open
your
it.
mic on?
Yeah, I think that's the video.
Oh, I can do that part.
I failed to say that this is being recorded.
No, you did.
Did I? Okay.
So, Delilah, if you make me an organizer, I can help with that piece.
I'm seeing myself on the TV there.
I know there's a lot going on. I feel like I'm at the UN.
Right.
Let's
All the
hope we're more
interpreters.
effective.
No, I'm co-host, so that's good.
I know. I was like,
Yeah, that'd be great.
Oh, you can.
Awesome. Well, so this is, like I said, I'm going to keep this under 10 minutes, which will be a test of how fast I can talk. But essentially, we just sort of wanted to take a step back and introduce the project to everybody and make sure that, the sort of overall look and feel of the development and some of the renderings and imagery that have been produced were sort of top of mind as we got into the discussion. This project started back in 2014. The first sketch plan application that we filed for it. We've been working ever since that day to get to this point in the project where we're building the last multifamily buildings at the the sort of completion of it. So we're excited about it and wanted to share that with you guys. So this is just an aerial overview that was updated this week to include some of the new images and metal screening and things that you can see. And we can move forward. So-
Andrew, could you pull the mic a little closer, please?
Yes.
Thanks. That's much better.
So we talked quite a bit about the Kennedy Drive elevations, and previously we had not had a digital rendering done of the Kennedy Drive frontage. So we did have that completed once the staff comments were received this past Wednesday, and this is that rendering. So you can see in the lower left a sort of screenshot of the site plan. This is from the rec path on Kennedy Drive looking at the building on lot 15. It just gives some good perspective of the grade on Kennedy Drive. You can see the large bank going up, and you can also see how the landscaping, and these are the immature trees that would be planted, sort of obscure the view of the lower levels of the building. We can keep moving forward. This is the intersection, the four corners that you guys have seen before. The pavement, brick, cement is all approved as part of the Summit project that got final plat approval and is going to be hopefully under construction soon with their project. And then you can see our building on lot 13. You can see the cafe that was added as part of that neighborhood commercial use, which is an amenity that was not contemplated at preliminary plat, but which we brought forward to sort of try and activate this streetscape. And if you go to the next slide, I think that's the video. So if you move the mouse toward the bottom, I think you can hit play. This video just takes you on sort of a ride from the four corners down to Kennedy Drive and then up Kennedy Drive. So you can sort of feel how you would experience the project if you were driving down the road. It's a little bit delayed there, but and we sort of thought this was helpful just to get an idea of the scale and sort of what it feels like from, I think this view is from the recreation path. And you can see some of the new details that we put in along the foundation wall, the metal screens sort of alternate light and dark colors to look a little bit like mountains going up and down.
What's not shown on these renderings are the headers that we were directed to add at the last hearing, and which we have added to the elevations, but we haven't incorporated into the renderings yet.
And here you can see sort of the bank along Kennedy and how that makes the building sort of disappear as you head up the road. So that was the sort of important part of that visual. We can keep cruising through. Hold to my 10 minutes. I think in the context of open space, we sort of wanted to take a step back and look at the broader context of the project as part of a master plan. There are two, significant open spaces connected to the project. The total open space in the master plan is, I think, 9.1 acres, which was associated with the full density of the master plan at the point that it was permitted. The two primary spaces are highlighted here, within a few hundred feet of the apartments. There's a walking loop around the stormwater pond, as well as a 4-acre wooded park with trails to walk your dog and a full playground, which is already built. And it just in the context of the overall project, sometimes we also don't talk about the setting of the project and how central it is to walking trails and recreation paths. This is just a quick highlight of sort of where you could go out of your front door to walk your dog or get some fresh air while you were working from home. Again, keep right on trucking. We had a rendering done of the rooftop open space to sort of give a look and feel of how it would be for residents. So you can see the fire pit, the sort of artificial turf areas, the different exterior rooms that have been set up. We can move to the next slide there. Back a couple, skipped over. Or maybe I didn't have it in here. Okay, yeah, there we go. So then this is just a quick overview again of the 4-way intersection, which is also an amenity on the site. It was permitted as part of the Summit project, but those benches, those plazas all along the 4-way intersection, sort of activating the street, are really important to the overall context of the project. The other two on-site open spaces are the food truck parking area and the area in front of the building on Kennedy Drive. Both of which, I think you can scroll forward, were contemplated at the preliminary plat. I think it was one specific comment at the preliminary plat from the board in regard to using some of the adjacent areas to the buildings to create barbecue areas, places to read a book, small urban plazas where people could get outside within the context of the overall master plan, and also with giving consideration to the adjacent Eastview project and the future open spaces that that's going to bring. And this is just an overview of those two spaces. The food truck amenity, where you can see the truck there, some planters, a fire pit, sort of a nice sitting area. We can keep cruising through. The other thing the board had kept in mind at preliminary plat was what's coming next. And this slide is just a quick overview of the open spaces that are proposed for final plat adjacent to the project. So you can see the large playground on open space lot 19, the natural play area. You can also see the dog park that's proposed as part of Eastview and how those two locations relate to the project. And we can keep, I think there's one more. This is another view of the open space proposed on lot 19. So this is the natural playground with the slide and tree fort, benches, tables, and you can see lot 13 there in the background. So I think in the context of open space, I think the board often doesn't look at interior amenities. I don't think it's necessarily something the regulations get too heavily into. But I think in the context of whether there's adequate tenant amenity in this project, that we can't overlook what the project's delivering for the tenants on the inside of the building. And so this is just a stacked view of what's inside the building. You can see the tenant amenity spaces highlighted in color. And there's a list of sort of what the project is providing for the tenants on the right. So it's over 8,000 square feet of amenity, pet spa, gym, yoga room, co-working, cafe, club room with a pool table, ski tuning shop, bike and ski storage, tenant storage, parcel room, restrooms is the short list. And if we kind of keep going through, this is the lot 15 building amenity layout, and you can see that stacked amenity in the central tower. Those spaces include a gym, I always say this word wrong, hearth room, game room type area with a fireplace, TV, chef's kitchen for bringing friends over, entertaining, as well as another co-working space. And then I just wanted to include a little bit of like the character of what the building is proposing. Now, these rooms are not just like an empty room with carpet. The gym is laid out with a full service of equipment. The yoga room, TRX wall, you can see some unique ceiling treatments, color palettes. It's got a bar wall, so it's really got a lot of amenity space in there for the residents.
What's the overall square footage, the footprint square footage of the building?
I don't know off the top of my head. The overall built square footage, including the garage between the two buildings, is 320,000 square feet, I believe.
So 60,000 something square feet to the floor. Huh?
Yeah, that divided by 8.
Yeah, that's probably about right. Yeah.
So this is just a quick overview of the cafe color palettes, the upholstery, the different, WeWork spaces, tables and chairs, and I think you can kind of just cruise through
Well,
to the.
to be clear, that the square footage that was referenced on that slide was one building of amenity space.
I understand that, right?
And it's also consistent with the form-based code requirements for interior amenity space too. So this is not out of the norm for a multifamily building of this square footage.
So that was sort of the end of the presentation. So we just kind of wanted to give a little color and character to sort of not only the exterior, the interior, and sort of give that perspective, those new renderings that were submitted.
Can I just clarify, nothing you showed here is a change from what the board has already seen on the other plans, aside from what Evan mentioned about the headers not being yet updated?
Correct.
Right.
By the way, what are the headers going to look like?
What are they going to look like? I think they're included in the
It's in the
elevations,
packet,
correct?
yeah.
And it's in the packet.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, thanks for letting us do that. Yeah, appreciate it.
So let's go ahead and start walking through the staff report.
And I did try to organize the staff comments generally in order of big to small, though they're not perfect. I'm kind of trying to head that direction without completely upsetting the apple cart. So hopefully the stuff at the beginning is the bigger stuff, and then as you get towards the end, it's more like checking boxes.
Okay, so number one, and we've already discussed a lot of these, so this is just making sure that we have everything locked down. Number one refers to the need for traffic impact study addendum, and whether or not lots 10, 11, 13, and 15 warrant the light.
Yeah, so, I've got Roger, I think. I can't tell who's
He is here, yeah.
here. Okay. I think Roger could speak to this.
I haven't sworn you in, I'm sorry.
Is it because it
I think
was
they're sworn in from last time.
Okay,
continued?
that
Unless
works.
Roger
right,
didn't.
good.
No, Roger did testify because he sat
Okay.
next to the piano. That was very memorable.
Okay, all right. That's all right, Roger. Yeah, we
Okay.
got you. Did you want to provide information about this, Roger?
Okay. So lot 13 and 15 construction will include the installation of a traffic signal at the intersection of Two Brothers Road and Kennedy Drive. And we expect, based on our estimates of the trip generation, that the signal will be warranted for full operation upon completion of the proposed buildings and their occupancy. And I believe that you have in your packet a memo from BFJ where they essentially agree with that, and they recommend that the signal be installed and operational when the number of trips exiting the project at this intersection exceed 100 trips during the morning peak hour. And so that will require some monitoring, but as the building is occupied, but we do anticipate that it will be it will be warranted. So the process basically will be that the applicant will install the traffic light. The traffic light can operate in what we call a flash mode until it's actually warranted, and then it could be turned on to full operation. And I think that's the best possible scenario for that traffic light. It could also be structured that as it's operating in the flash mode, until such time as it's warranted, that the pedestrian signals would be functional, so that if pedestrians wish to cross Kennedy Drive at this location, they would have the benefit of a full pedestrian signal, which would stop vehicle or traffic on Kennedy Drive and make it much safer to cross.
Roger, that sounds wonderful, but I do have a bit of a concern, which is I don't know if the city has sort of the authority to require ongoing monitoring. Did you have any suggestions for how we might deal with figuring out when it is triggered?
Well, I in many projects that I've worked on have had conditions from DRBs that have required traffic monitoring. I don't know why that could not be a condition of approval, that the traffic light be installed and be made operational when the traffic volumes exceed that 100 vehicle per hour threshold during the peak hour. So,
But who determines that? Go ahead, Frank.
Well, I was just going to say, I mean, why can't we just, is there some, humongous expense or some reason not to make it fully operational upon construction? I mean, what is the delta there in cost or?
Our expectation is that we put in the light and we turn it on.
Yeah, Roger, and we avoid the monitoring problem.
Isn't there some undesirable impact of having signals when signals aren't warranted? Or do I misunderstand that?
the manual and uniform traffic control devices basically leaves that question up to the engineering and municipalities. The net question, I guess the $1 million question that we have to ask and answer is, will the traffic signal produce a net benefit to traffic flow? And if the answer to that question is yes, then the signal can be turned on and made fully operational. So I think in this case, with Kennedy Drive being a 4-lane highway and the anticipated volumes of traffic exiting the hillside development, that there will be a net benefit here to having an operational, functional traffic signal.
I didn't understand the answer.
I think the answer is we would love to put the signal in and turn it on. And so if the board's agreeable to that, let's go ahead.
Yeah, so I think what Roger's saying is that the MUTCD, which is the manual that sort of dictates how to design traffic control, says that you can put it in before it's warranted as long as it produces a net benefit. Is that correct? Good, adequate
Yes.
paraphrasing? Okay.
And this is a matter of regulation or just good practice from an engineering standpoint?
So the MUTCD governs state highways. I don't know if we have adopted it as our municipal policy or not. But I mean, it's a good practice, certainly.
It sounds like it would be a benefit, so it would comply. So
Well,
we
I
could
think
have Roger write a letter that would say that he believes it would be a net benefit to have it operational, and you put that in the file and proceed with constructing it.
Did you want to say something?
Yeah, I mean, can we write the permit so it just says you'll build a traffic light and you'll turn it on when you finish construction?
I think would hate to build a traffic light and have it sit there idle. I mean, that seems absurd. So, I mean,
Yeah, well, I think we need to be clear about that this is not required. If they want to build it, it's permitted.
so. I should know this probably, but did the traffic impact study just measure the impact of the two buildings you're presenting now and the two that have already been proposed, or did it also include Hillside?
it includes everything. So
Okay.
it's the full
Including the
projected.
other two that aren't yet proposed
Okay.
as well. Yeah.
Because I was going to say, I know if there's a traffic light there, when I'm heading to the highway or heading anywhere toward the airport, I'm going to go that way and not up and down Eldridge. So I'm glad to hear that.
It sounds like there's relatively low risk of it not being acceptable to turn it on with the construction of these buildings. It would be good to just double check with DPW and our traffic consultant to make sure that there aren't any other concerns.
Okay.
What I would suggest at this juncture is put a pin in this, and if there's other outstanding issues, this will be another one that we look into. And if there are outstanding issues, we'll have to decide if this is something that we continue the hearing on the basis of, or if we just take the risk. And
Okay. Can we live with that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess because I would say I'm wondering if like the CO issued for the second building triggers it being turned on, rather than having to worry about once enough units are occupied, you hit that 100 vehicle trip threshold. It's basically the buildings are occupied and functional, and then they can just start to become occupied as more and more tenants.
We certainly want to have the light on.
Yeah.
So
There's no pushback on our
we're
end.
happy to proceed with that.
Okay. We still need an addendum, Marla?
I mean, I think that Roger has testified of what the addendum would say.
Okay.
Right.
All right. So it's not an actual question from staff, but in the body of the staff report, it asked for an explanation of the reduced outdoor common space. That's not the word we use, not common space. What is the term? Outdoor
Open space.
open. Thank you, Mark. And I think what your presentation told us was that you have a lot of indoor kind of open space that you consider an amenity.
Yeah, and I think what we're really getting at in this staff report is that, we did as staff a side-by-side comparison of the preliminary plat drawings and the current drawings, and it's the same between the preliminary and final. And the outdoor looks like it's slightly reduced. So that's kind of where we get into staff comment number 2 and 3, or actually just 2 about, higher, 30 more units, reduced ground level open spaces, same amount of interior common spaces. How does the board feel about that?
So just a few sort of corrections. So with the interior common space is increased by 2,000 square feet from the preliminary plat submission to the current submission. The exterior amenity spaces at the preliminary plat were presented as conceptual sketches, hand-drawn on the plans. In a discussion and in the preliminary plat finding, it said that we would firm up the designs at final plat, which we've done. The food truck area that you're showing currently, I think there's just a little bit of misunderstanding about how it would be used. So we, in the letter we submitted today, explained that we put the bollards where they are sort of to protect people from the food truck, and maybe that was a bad choice. So we went ahead and moved the bollards to the other side of the food truck and made them removable so that the orange area is now going all the way to the bottom of where the access road is. And so now that amenity is actually 200 square feet bigger than the hand-drawn sketch that was shown at preliminary plat. A couple of other things that I'd just like to note. So we increased the building number of units by 30, but we decreased the number of bedrooms by 10. So we had a lot more 2-bedroom units in the old plan, and we pushed those to add 30 studio apartments, as well as some more smaller 1-bedroom units. And so while there has been an increase in the number of units, there was not an increase in the size of the parking lot. There was not an appreciable increase in the size of the building, and we actually reduced the number of bedrooms in the building because studio apartments aren't considered a bedroom, right? So it's, that's taking those 30 studios and saying those bedrooms don't count. So there is a little bit of a, I think it's overstating the significance of the increase in units to just say that we went up by 30 because we actually reduced the size, right? So in terms of the number of residents, it's probably roughly comparable.
Okay. Thoughts and questions, board?
I think, for me, I know we always try to look at preliminary to final and compare it, kind of apples to apples. I'm trying to look at, I understand because I've been on both sides of the table. I totally get the conceptual to the engineered, and I really just wanted to look to see if what's being provided is adequate for the project being presented at final. And, I think the food truck area still feels fine. I'm not concerned, but I do agree that the whatever the top one, is that the one that's on Kennedy Drive that's at the sort of like the knuckle of the building and then goes down? Obviously that one is more significantly reduced in size and function. But I think given the location and given the way it's going to be used, it's probably still fine because, I think on the building to Kennedy isn't as much of a common area usage as something that's more on the interior of the site. So I think it's as an amenity and as an open space, it still to me feels like it's probably adequate. I mean, I am a little disappointed because it definitely changed in functionality and layout when you went from conceptual preliminary to final because of the fact that it looks like you had 2 different levels with like the ADA ramp and now you just have one flat surface. But again, I know these things happen during engineering phase. So.
Right. Other comments?
Yeah, I'll chime in here. I mean, to me, the only thing that's operable is what the standard says, and that's talking about, open space between adjoining parcels and stream buffer areas. So yeah, Mark's explanation of how the process works is a good one. And, to me, the process from preliminary to final is about providing more information and refining and preliminary as a check-in. not a thing of you can never change anything that was approved in preliminary and final and stuff. At least, hopefully, that's my understanding. Because if it's not, then we're in trouble. But yeah, I like what I see, and yeah, and it fits with the standard. If we were to see this just as one combined application, it works for me.
So I just want to say, last week I was in Michigan. One of my daughters was finishing graduating from graduate school at the University of Michigan, and she has a friend group, and one of the friends of means, as opposed to my daughter who lived in this tiny graduate student apartment, lived in a complex like this, and it did have a pool, but it had a lot of outdoor patios and it had common rooms. And one night, the 4 graduates and all their family members were invited to a cookout, and the kids all arranged a cookout. And I couldn't help but think, wow, this is great space. This is wonderful to have this kind. I mean, it had a kitchen, and then you walked outside and there were grills, and it was really delightful. And it occurred to me that we spend a lot of time indoors in Vermont. We're not always using outdoor patios and whatever. We spend a lot of time indoors, and I think that I really got to see the functionality of that kind of indoor space and amenity in a complex. So I like what you've done.
Thank you.
Other comments, questions? Okay. So can we move on? Yeah. All right. What is that room?
I
The
think
secret room.
I'm pretty sure that the design architect Tim is on the call, but my first glance.
Could you come forward to
Sorry, I think the design architect's on the call. He can confirm me if I'm wrong, but I believe that room is a mechanical room of some sort, like a water sprinkler valve room.
All right. It's not a way for you guys to escape.
No. Tim can correct me if I'm wrong, but
yeah.
Go ahead.
I can't. I'm online, so I can't see it. Which room are we talking about exactly?
So on the side of lot 15 facing Kennedy Drive, there is an exterior door that enters into a small room with no other entries or exits.
It's on the other side of the stairs from the new bike rack room, in the corner of the garage.
It's definitely a mechanical room.
Yeah.
I looked at it.
All right.
So I can.
Yeah, just give me I'm going to pull it up. I'll pull up the plan here in just a second.
So it's not an O'Brien Brothers den where you
No.
That's where
And you said it's on the Kennedy Drive side?
Yep.
Yes.
Storage for the removable bollards that we put at the food truck parking area. So.
And you said it's next to the stair?
Yeah, small room accessed off the little terrace.
So we have that labeled as a riser room. Potentially, if we need to do something for the fire marshal, or it can be used as a mechanical space. It's a mechanical space, so to speak.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
And then below number 3, which is in red, there are some LDRs quoted, and then there's a paragraph that Marla wrote, and I think it should probably be in red because it said, staff recommends the board require the applicant to correct this grading without changing the configuration of the walkway or sidewalk as a condition of approval.
Yep, we saw that. We can get that looked at, corrected. Our intent would be to, to get you that prior to the next conversation.
Okay. So number 4, we need a revised lighting plan that's consistent with the LDRs.
Yeah, we submitted that today with a full explanation as to what happened. Lighting plan's been corrected. We swapped out 2 fixtures that were causing some problems. It should be all copacetic. I think, the one outstanding question is that I think you say there's a 0.3 foot candle limit at the property line, but there's a bunch of street lights at the property line. So I don't know how that interacts, but I assume there's some kind of exception for that. But otherwise, the property lines are on the plan. Every fixture has been given a height. Every fixture has been given a number. every fixture has a model number that correlates to a spec sheet that was supplied, so it should be pretty rock solid at this point.
What's your what's your maximum foot candles? I'm just trying to like close this item out by having a conversation about it.
I don't have the plan in front of me. It was low,
I can pull it up.
1.3.
So in the supplemental, Delilah, there should be something called the lighting plan.
Yeah, I think it starts with combined. Combined lighting plan is the name of the file.
Combined lighting plan in the supplemental. It's sheet.
I got a real crash course in lighting to get that thing. This
yeah.
project has taken me to lighting school. So
We've all been through that once. For us, it was on FedEx. Page 3. Yeah, you're on it. So in the top right of the page, says the maximum foot candles is 4.8 overall, and the average is 0.15, and then the average in the paved area is 1.2, and in the roadway is 0.75. So yeah, it looks like I'm zoomed into like where your cursor is right now.
Yep, and then the table down below is every fixture's number and the mounting height.
Okay.
Which is the Z coordinate.
Okay, so there is another comment that's not in red. It says staff recommends the board require the applicant to locate building-mounted lights within 5 feet of the top of doorways in order to prevent the effect being that of a floodlight.
I think that's fine.
Okay.
I mean, we're not looking to put lights more than 5 feet above a door.
Okay.
So.
Number 5, deficiencies in lighting plan need to be addressed. It sounds like you've done that.
Yep.
Okay, good. Any questions from the board? Okay. Moving on to number 6. I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board direct the applicant to significantly increase the variability of glazing, and if creating penetrations into the garage space is no longer viable, significantly improve the appearance of the garage walls. What have you got to say?
Well, so when we had a pretty long discussion about this on the 15th, about the architecture, the outcome of that conversation from our notes and from what we resubmitted to the board was that we would look at adding headers to the windows, that we would fill in with some glazing on the north end of lot 15 where there was a sort of large blank wall, and that we would drop the storefront glazing down to grade at the knuckle of lot 15 in lieu of the sort of metal door shown there in the middle. So we did all that. We submitted a new lot 15 elevation. We just submitted one sheet, which you can zoom into to see the headers and things, as sort of detailed. But in this picture, you can see sort of the black window headers over the beige windows on the right, and you can see the sort of effect of that change. And so we think the headers look good. We liked it the other way. We like it this way. We're happy to update all the architecturals for the file if the board thinks that's a good direction. But we didn't want to kind of do all 10 or 12 elevations or whatever it is without getting a little bit of feedback on it.
What's the material? It's hard to I mean, I see the color of the headers, but what's the material? What's the
I think that the file is pretty high resolution. If
it's
we
a
could,
what? I didn't hear.
Sorry, the file is pretty high resolution. If maybe we could zoom in on the PDF so you guys could.
And Tim, do you want to speak to that?
Yes, sir. It would be a hardy board siding or trim work because we're using hardy board panels or a cementitious panel, a cementitious siding, and so the trim work would be of an equal material, just a different color to kind of highlight the header, as we previously discussed in the last meeting.
I think if we can zoom in even more, because a lot of the detail doesn't show up till you get pretty close. So you can see the sort of, the brick shelf there. You can see the headers sketched in over the, in the brick and then over the windows.
Are those Juliet balconies?
Yes.
Okay.
And then we had submitted an updated elevation or an updated digital rendering of lot 15 today as well, where you can zoom in and sort of, you can't see the headers, but just in the context of those metal screens, I think I mentioned to the last meeting, those are just kind of like Revit file placeholders. And so we did land on a metal screen to use, and we had the rendering updated with the product that we would propose. And I think it'd be helpful to just take a look at that, just so you guys can see the, we haven't submitted that yet for in CAD files, but we had it, and we just wanted to sort of show you that that metal square is not the proposal. It's just sort of indicating something that would go there. I think there's a PDF of a digital rendering, or it says like lot 15 from, or even the aerial version actually shows the screens pretty well. You guys can binge watch on YouTube the video of the drive-by too, which also has the screens in it. I think we've got a couple, 2 or 3 views at this point. So that's not the you can kind of only see them poking through the trees there. Is the aerial one might be the better, get a better feel for it. And if you can zoom in a little bit.
What's the drain? Yeah, it's an enormous flat roof. How's the drainage work for those things?
That's a
Tim?
We are we're doing interior drainage and overflow drainage. We've got roof leaders already coordinated throughout the building with the plumbing engineer, and those will go down to the basement level and connect to a line that will take it to the storm system.
So where are the outflows? Just periodic spots along the.
Well, yeah, and it won't be an open outflow. It'll all be a contained system.
So there won't be a visible outflow, is what you're saying?
Only for the ORDs.
For the
The
what?
ORDs are going to a spot along the wall. Yes,
I think that's
and they
the
will have a
overflow.
scupper.
Overflow. roof drain.
Yeah, sorry, the
If
overflow
the
roof
primary
drains.
fails.
Yeah, they
You
are
know that the
piped to
primary
the
failed.
exterior wall because you've got to have a visual indicator if there's a problem in the system.
Okay.
And the flat roofs are being used for the air conditioning condensers largely. The whole building is powered with electric, so it's electric heat pump heat. Other than the fireplaces and maybe the gas stove in the chef's kitchen, actually it might be induction. So it's in line with the sort of city's energy goals of reducing fossil fuel usage as well.
But no solar collectors up there or anything?
I think that we've looked into it.
Yeah, we had talked about that a while back, that the challenge with all the rooftop units is it really doesn't leave any remaining space for solar up there.
So the new version of the LDRs, which they're not subject to, does require a certain amount of the roof to be solar ready, but they're not subject to that.
Solar ready, as in structurally sound, wired for it. Got it.
Okay.
But
Well,
these guys are not subject to that.
So we just had a good view of the panels. I don't know if you guys noticed when Delilah zoomed in, but essentially, I think it's a sort of mesh material printed with, similar color tones to the building, and then going up and down in line with the windows, sort of mimicking like a mountain landscape, as you sort of drive past.
Are you
What's nice
talking
about
about the
it,
garage things or the Juliet balconies?
the garage
Oh.
panels, so they're semi-opaque screens.
So that goes to one of the comments later on in the staff comments regarding the landscaping deficiencies and spending some of that additional money. Is that in this project?
Yep.
Okay. So I guess that's one thing I wouldn't mind discussing now, because we're sort of discussing the elevations, because I found that to be a very interesting concept. But I think we need to talk about it in big picture of the landscaping and rather than just throw it out now. So I don't know if we want to.
Okay, so put a pin in it?
Sure.
Okay, good. All right, number 6. We talked about that, okay. Number 7, staff recommends the board discuss whether the requirements established by the board are met.
Yeah, so we submitted to help with this conversation today, a digital rendering of the side of lot 13, which this comment is about. There you go. And so you can also see it in the video with the car, driving down the road. I think the context of the comment was with regard to sort of creating an interesting environment on this side of the building. I don't have it memorized. We feel like it comes off really nicely. There's going to be a light under that awning. There's some storefront under there. If you zoom in, you can see the storefront doors that the gentleman's about to walk into. I thought I had asked to try and brighten that a little so we could see it better, but apparently that didn't happen. But if you there you can see the storefront doors. There will be lights underneath that. At night, that's a public entrance, so it'll be lit up. And then you can see the sort of lawn area heading up to the terrace for the cafe, the stair tower there on the left. You can see the stair, through the windows. You can see the landscaping that was proposed, perennials and flowers along the top.
Okay. What do you think, board? Are the
Works
requirements?
for me.
Okay, thanks, Dan. Other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm okay with
All right.
Okay, good. Number 8. This is about landscaping value. So there was a deficiency, and the question is, should we require the applicant to update the landscaping schedule of values?
Yeah, so I went back to the previous staff report because there was a chart in there that sort of talked about the values of the landscaping and what to count and not to count. We have not submitted any updates to the landscaping because we didn't get to this item at the last hearing.
Okay.
So we never had the benefit of your opinion on what should count and not count. So we haven't made any updates to that. I guess if that chart, if you have the chart that was in the previous staff comments handy, we could look at that, or I could sort of walk you through what those said.
Andrew, would it be okay with you if I just kind of paraphrased?
Yeah, that's
Tell you what, I'll start with paraphrasing, and then if you are uncomfortable with that, we'll. So I'm going to open that guy. So essentially, they had been asking for credit for a bunch of different types of things for their landscaping budget. Concrete pavers, both the terraces and sort of driveway between the buildings. There was a stone dust sitting area. There were site furnishings, trees, shrubs, perennials, grasses, shrubs, perennials, and grasses on that upper story deck. And so staff had said, well, trees and shrubs are obviously a given. Perennial grasses are at the board's discretion. And then often the board has allowed concrete pavers, but with this staff report, we kind of had the idea of, was sort of this not very interesting appearance to the blank faces of the garages. What if instead of doing concrete pavers, they installed some art along the sides of the buildings? And, that's not to say that concrete pavers aren't nice, but staff's position was that would be better potentially to just have plain concrete and interesting artwork than to spend a bunch of money. I guess, let me rephrase it. It feels like concrete pavers should be sort of the last resort. You can't possibly find another place to plant another plant or another way to do anything cool.
Yep.
And so maybe this is another way to do something cool that doesn't resort to just throwing money at concrete pavers.
And pavers you generally only see when you're there, as opposed to when you're driving by. And whatever, but.
Well, a general mandate for art and generalized art doesn't resonate for me. I mean, to pass on something, I'd rather see it come out of from the developer's proposal. What's going to be there? What do you mean art? Like sculptures, metal sculptures, Michelangelo.
I think what resonated with me was on the two elevations above staff comment number 7, which shows the Two Brothers Drive elevation, where if you look at the preliminary plat elevation, especially those inset panels, which are definitely more decorative, more artistic, add some interest to the building. And then you look at the final plat, with just the grates, that to me is the difference that I think that staff is going to, and I was alluding to before, is I think it's a really more interesting way to give it a little bit more of a pedestrian feel. Because right now, the building is so big that it becomes a little homogeneous with just the panels every so often, along the base of the building. And I think if you were to break it up with different patterns, different textures, different materials, just to give it a little more of an interest. And that, I think, is where I would support the differential in the landscape, budget to spend some money there. It doesn't have to be every one of them, and I'm not going to tell you how big, how many, but I think that was when I saw the little inset panels with the decorative sort of, I can't tell if it's like a silhouette of a forest scene or something like that. That's what it looks like from this.
I don't think anybody knew what that was when they put it
that's
on
what it looks
there,
like,
which is
looking
part
up
of
to
the
a forest
problem.
canopy. That's to me, the shadowscape. And then seeing what's being proposed, that's what I sort of saw as being lost in translation from preliminary to final. So if there's some way I totally get what you're going for with the panels, where you have them bouncing up and down like you do with the materials on the elevations to sort of be representative of mountainscape. But I think you're doing that with the building. I think you need to do something different with those panels on the garage.
So, Mark, are you suggesting kind of a textured panel or something?
Design. I just think what I'm saying is that I see the preliminary plat inset panel as being really interesting and decorative, and then I see what's being proposed, and it's something I lost. So I think whether it's a different material, whether it's we've always heard the buzzword these days of Corten steel, or like the brushed aluminum, some mesh screens, something where you just get some interest in whether it's a bunch of different ones or just one upgraded panel, I don't know.
And Marla, which concrete pavers are you referencing that you think is overdone?
So just generally, like you have concrete pavers at the terraces and you have concrete pavers on the driveway between the buildings. You're certainly welcome to have concrete pavers, but generally, that's sort of like we can't possibly put another tree on the site, so we're going to do concrete pavers rather than being one of the first things that the landscape budget gets spent on.
Well, so I think, just for like a little bit of, context on why we included the pavers and specifically, going back to that preliminary plat conversation.
Andrew, speak up, please. Move that in a little.
Going back to the preliminary plat conversation that we had, when our original preliminary plat proposal came in, we had grass. We had benches and grass for people to have outdoor spaces. And there was feedback from the board, I think it was staff comment 17 in the preliminary plat packet, that we should look to use those grass areas to create urban plazas. And we did that. And the total cost of the urban plazas, as estimated by PC Construction, is over $300,000. That's for the retaining walls, for the concrete pavers going inside the retaining walls for those plazas. We included in our landscape budget the cost of surfacing the paver areas, which is roughly $100,000, and felt that was a good compromise because they were requested. And it seems like if they're being requested, then they're of some importance. And certainly, concrete is one alternative, but grass is another alternative in some of those areas. So, the urban plaza feel was something that we felt, we could include there. So that was our sort of take on, and I certainly understand, the feedback in the area of the driveway where we're using concrete pavers in lieu of pavement. certainly the cost there would be the difference between pavement and the pavers, and we would agree with that. That's an oversight on our part to sort of not discount that. But in the areas of the actual terraces that were created at the request of the board, we felt it was a good use of those landscape dollars. For a little bit of clarity, so the landscape budget here is, I think, $485,000. The landscape budget for Hillside for 30 acres with 115 homes was like 500. And here we're on about 5 acres. So we've sort of got a big budget to work with in a small amount of area. And so I think we were still short in our, even counting the pavers, of the required landscaping. And so I think, we had said at our previous hearing for the Summit project, there was some streetscape money that was available to be applied if the landscaping standards weren't met. And we were just using that pool to sort of make up the difference to the end. And so I think, sort of the most important feedback for us in terms of kind of finalizing the proposal would be, are the plazas that we've created, worth being counted in terms of the pavers, from your perspective? And then, are there areas of the site where the landscaping is deficient, where we should add more trees? Because obviously that would be the first, area to sort of use the money. And then, if we're not finding areas that are deficiently landscaped, and we are counting, to some degree, to some extent, the pavers, and we still have an excess, our preference would be to dip into the money that was allocated from the last permit rather than to spend more money on a new feature. That being said, the screens are included in the project. We have them on the elevations and they are part of the project. So to some extent, I think, if they can be included as landscaping is sort of, they're going to be there either way because we've proposed them to you, if that makes any sense.
So thoughts, board? Marla, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that.
Well, are we arguing taste or are we arguing cost? I'm a little confused because I feel competent only to comment on cost. Have they met the cost requirement? And is the money being spent on things that either by precedent or black letter count toward the landscaping budget?
Are you saying you have no taste, Frank?
I'm saying I have marvelous taste, but I'm not sure I can apply it on this scale in a meaningful way that's worth commenting on.
Marla, do you have any thoughts about what Frank just asked?
No, I was trying to find the right page in the packet, so
Okay.
I missed half of what Frank said.
But there's a question in there. I mean, are we meeting, because I got a little lost in the narrative, are we meeting the cost requirement with elements that are allowed to be included in cost?
No,
Pardon?
no, not right now.
Well, then we should,
as
that's what we should
Andrew-
be focusing on.
But then Andrew noted correctly, which I had forgotten about, that in the lot 10 and 11 approval, they had excess that the board may, not must, allow them to apply towards future deficits.
So does that make up the gap? Is it sufficient?
Yes. With extra.
Okay. I mean, because honestly, to me, the site feels well landscaped.
Yeah.
I don't think we're looking for areas to throw more landscaping in. I mean, but if there's a deficiency that isn't met with the lots 10 and 11, then we should be looking at how it's calculated. But if it sounds like the numbers are adding up.
Yeah, I think I don't have them all in front of me. My assumption is if you take out the $100,000 worth of pavers, that it might not be sufficient. And so we might need to have a sort of guidepost on whether those plaza costs, to some extent would be able to be used. So one thing I forgot to note, staff comment in the previous report had asked to substantiate the paver cost in the landscape estimate. We did go back to the construction manager and provided an annotated estimate from them. In reviewing that sort of quickly and doing some math on my phone, it appears as though that results in about a $40,000 increase in cost just on what we proposed. If we go with the numbers from PC Construction that they're currently budgeting for the project. So that does fill the gap to some degree, and we will adjust the budget just with that increase in the cost of what we previously thought it would be. So that gives us about $40,000, and I believe we were still off by about our budget was 398, the requirement was 485, and that included the $100,000 worth of pavers. So we have $140,000 that's allocable from that previous permit, which would make up that difference with an excess of about 60. But if you were to remove the $100,000 of, so there's a bunch of sort of pieces to figure out there. If the metal screens are an eligible cost, we could look at adding those in as well. I think we can probably solve the puzzle, but I think the question of including those plazas is one that we'd sort of need some guidance on in order to sort of come back with a proposal that works.
I thought if we add the difference from concrete to pavers, if they allow that, that would contribute towards. Because didn't we include the whole paver price?
We did.
So if we just do the difference, that would help.
Yeah, that would certainly help. To do what staff had suggested and say just the difference beyond the cost of concrete or potentially the cost of grass in areas where conceivably the patio could be grass with picnic tables. Because that was the reason we didn't include the cost of the retaining walls, even though it's pretty high, was, they create the flat space for people to use, and the flat space really wasn't there without it, right? So that was the sort of thinking behind that. But they could be filled with grass. And so, if you sort of said in areas that could be grass, use the difference between grass and pavers, and in areas that couldn't be grass, that's like a walkway, then no, you do between concrete or whatever.
Can I just jump in? I think the question you're asking here is, does the board consider the cost of pavers to be allowed for this project? And if not, you have a little work to do, and if so, then you don't have a lot of work to do. Can we boil it down to that?
And it
Yes.
sounds like we have a potential comment over here. What is your name,
Jeff
please?
Hodson, I think I was sworn in last time.
Okay. What is your role?
Landscape architect.
Thank you.
So I just wanted to clarify, we only used the pavers in pedestrian areas. I think there was a comment that it went across a drive or something, but that's pigmented concrete.
Okay.
So that's a different, we actually didn't use the pavers really wildly. It's kind of limited to people spaces in some of the amenity areas and terraces. And I thought it made sense to use the difference between pavers and regular concrete. I thought that was a reasonable suggestion in the staff comments.
So I'm a little lost.
Originally, we included the whole paver cost, and so
And now we're talking about the differential.
differential.
So what is the different, how much does that reduce what you calculated by?
I don't have that number on the top of my head, but if concrete is $6 a square feet and we had pavers at, I can't remember what they had it at. I think it was
I
like
can
30
tell you.
or 35.
I have a question while he's looking for that. And Marla, I think this might be for you.
25.
Obviously, we normally look at the difference as far as like going towards the cost. And I think one of the questions here is if in areas that are grassed to use that as the difference as like the threshold. Is that something we've done before, or is there not precedent for that?
There's not, no.
Okay, so I think to answer your question, Andrew, I think we would just be looking at the cement versus pavers and not the grass that you were suggesting. So I think hopefully that clarifies one component of the question.
So
At least that's my understanding. Of course.
Yeah, I would agree with that because your point about how these areas are created because the board requested them to be added in, that's just to make the project viable from a large residential development. So saying that you could have grassed them instead of paved them isn't really a healthy or proper comparison, because if you grass them, you wouldn't be using them year round for outdoor, amenity space.
Sure.
So-
I think, if we're hearing that the metal screening or decorative screening, could be an eligible cost.
No, that wasn't what my point was at all. My point
Well-
was that that's again another element that's required for the actual project, not for landscaping. But if you were deficient, I think I was going to the fact that you could upgrade those to some actual artwork
Right.
of some sort, but not
Not
what's
what we're
there.
currently proposing, but potentially an upgraded version could be an eligible component. The differential between the concrete and the colored concrete or concrete and pavers could be an eligible component.
Yep.
The site is sufficiently landscaped in the sense that more plant material isn't needed. I think that we can solve the puzzle and get to the 480.
Okay, so are we
Yeah,
good? Dan, were you going to say something?
Yeah, I'm good with it. I don't like this idea of conflating open space with artwork on the walls and mixing. The architectural standard is vague enough as it is, and I don't want to be mixing things or designing things for them. I think the paver thing is the differential cost is key. We've done it on other projects, and I also think it's also a recognition of, we really don't. We want to make the space usable, even in quote unquote the off season, like the mud season right now. And if we were just to have a bunch of patches of green space, it would all be wet and soggy, and dogs will probably pee and poop there anyway too. So, I like the this is a different kind of development. It's more of an urban feel. And I like this. It's recognizing what it is, and we're not trying to recreate the damn Vermont farmhouse over and over again. So let's not try to do that. So I think this is great. So
Are we allowed to update our plant unit costs? Because they have gone up since we first submitted that. They're going up like every other month.
So what I'm hearing is that there needs to just be a little bit of work on this. So
Yeah.
far, I haven't heard. We're only on comment 8 or so of 15, but if we can kind of get some clear direction on everything, I think we can continue them for one more quick hearing and do a draft decision at that time.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
Yeah, I think we've got enough on the landscaping
okay.
to get you what you need for the next conversation.
All right, so we're ready to move on.
Good news is
Can
I
I-
think
can I
the
just
next
ask
few
something
comments
about-
are quick.
Go ahead,
just
Dan.
for the record on Marla, can you describe your comment on number 9? Because I don't know if the horse trading about how open space is that a moot comment now?
what element of that?
What of the statement, the applicant is providing so little open space,
Yep.
seems a little strong to me. I recognize where you're coming from, but the standard was there's no percent requirement for open space.
No, but there's
Right.
a expectation established at preliminary plat of a certain amount of open space.
Right, but there's nothing in the standard that says,
But this preliminary
10% or
plat
50%.
establishes the standards for the project. Right,
Okay.
It's essentially writing things that the project has to comply with.
okay.
And if I could just clarify the issue of the metal screens on the walls, I would say that doing them as artwork in association with those open spaces that they're adjacent to would be not the entire wall of them, but just so that they improve the aesthetics of the open space that they're nearby, so that it's adding a decorative element to it.
All right, I think we've covered 9. So let's move on to 10, and this is about the aggregation of parking, and we're going to be revisiting this with your other proposal.
Yep.
What are your thoughts about that?
So the preliminary plat had a finding that said to review this requirement on a parking lot by parking lot basis. Our opinion is we should do that. We comply under that rule. So, I get there's a little bit of a complication in that it's not technically in the same master planned area, but it is one parking lot. It's going to be experienced as one parking lot by everybody who looks at it. It's servicing the project. It's connected, and frankly, it's it just makes sense to review it on a parking lot by parking lot basis, which is why that finding exists in the preliminary plat permit. So, we're hopeful that the board agrees with that, and I think it complies in if that's the opinion of the board, and we would hope to just
Yeah, so this is really a question for the board.
I agree with them. I mean, I shouldn't have interrupted Marla, but
That's
is
all I had to say.
I mean, because I agree. We should. I mean, it is complicated because they are separate parcels, but we are looking at them as a whole.
Yeah.
So if the actual parking lot meets the standard, I think that's how we should be reviewing it.
I agree. Any other thoughts from board members? You look pensive, Frank.
I'm pensive because I didn't prepare well enough.
Okay, all right. Okay, let's move on to 11. This is regarding the interior parking lot landscaping.
I have to confess, I read the rule differently than I think you are reading it, or potentially the board has interpreted it. The comment, I think up above, maybe the rule is quoted. Oh, it's right there. Yeah. So a minimum dimension of 6 feet on any one side. So to me, that means if the island has one side that's longer than 6 feet and a total area of 60 square feet, it complies. And all of our islands meet that requirement. I think the interpretation here seems to say minimum dimension of 6 feet on all sides. But that's not what I read, and so that's not how we designed it. We designed it, so they were a minimum of 6 feet on any one side, and they were all 60 square feet total. We did provide a visual that might help you guys get oriented to what we're talking about.
Yeah, and I mean, Andrew and I were discussing this because if it were the other interpretation, why wouldn't the language have just said a minimum of 6 feet on all sides?
Well, so the way this has been interpreted is that the point is to provide adequate area to keep a tree alive.
Right.
And so when you're, 6 feet long and 2 feet wide, it's really hard to keep a tree alive in that shape space. So that's where we're coming from.
We went through after the last hearing because there were a number of, there was a plan, it should be, trying to think of what it was called. I submitted it today, and it should be called like parking lot area calculation or something like that, or
I mean, that's in the packet already.
oh dear. I put all the square footages on it though in the one that we submitted today just to help.
I mean, no one's taking umbrage with the fact that they're 60 square feet.
Well, it's just like because it shows the green, right? So you can see like where the islands that we're talking about.
And
Well,
like I said,
and I
that's
mean,
in the packet.
to that point, I mean, we have to bond for all this landscaping, and so, if we're comfortable with it, and if our landscape architects are comfortable with it, and if our landscaper is comfortable with it, and it's our money at risk, and we're talking about a 3-year landscaping bond, I guess the question is, if the tree makes it 3 years, what's really the risk that we're talking about? Because it's also on our property.
Delilah, I think it starts with a P, parking lot, island, something.
Get that. I get that.
It's, I think, I get that someone may have a difference of opinion, and I'm not a tree expert, but that's why we hire consultants. So,
Right.
And then that's why the city also requires us to bond for it.
I'm glad to see the landscape architect standing up because he seems to be the one most competent to speak to the issue.
So I think the comment might have been recommending a minimum width of 6 feet, not a length of a side. And so I believe our smallest island is 5 feet wide and way over 60 square feet, if I remember right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and
So
that was a change. So from the first hearing on March 15th, there were a number of islands that were only 4 feet wide. And this comment had appeared in the staff report then, and we adjusted all of the islands to be 5 feet wide at minimum, which is the same width, I think, as a greenbelt along the street, the city standard greenbelt. So you would think if a tree could grow in a 5-foot greenbelt, it could grow in a 5-foot parking lot island.
So I think our smallest island is 5 by 18, which is way over 60 square feet.
So in your estimation, or given your expertise and knowledge, do you believe that the islands are sufficient to grow trees in, healthy trees?
Yeah. I mean, it's always, I would love to have huge islands, but I do think they're sufficient. And like Andrew said, the green belt along Two Brothers Drive is, I think, 5 feet wide.
Okay.
So it's kind of no different than that.
So that satisfies me. What do other board members think?
It's the best evidence we have, and we can't make it up.
Right.
So,
Okay. Let's move on. Number 12, question number 12. Staff recommends the board revise this criterion once planting islands are revised to meet minimum dimensions. Well, that's the same issue, isn't it? Yes. Let's go to 13. And this is about you're increasing the minimum tree size to 2.5 calipers.
Yeah, we'll adjust that.
Okay. Thank you.
And that'll increase your landscape budget. Right.
Yeah, right. Okay. Number 14, this is bike parking areas. Comments about that?
Yeah, we just thought that, on a project basis was how the criteria was reviewed. And so we're a few spaces short in one of the buildings, and we'll have to get you an updated.
Okay.
Andrew,
Yeah,
I think it's
plan.
okay on a project basis if people can access each other's buildings. But what you told us before is that people can't access each other's buildings.
Well, the residents of Building 13 would have access to Building 15 because they're able to use the amenities in Building
It's the same
15 as
ownership.
well, because it's under the same ownership.
Okay.
So if that works, then we're happy to leave it as is. We have enough spaces. There's just some, I think we're like 13 short in Building 13. And
I don't
13
think the
over
board's been
in
asked that
15.
question before, so I'd like to get their opinion on that. So there's a minimum of 1 space per unit of long-term bike parking. If there's too many in one building and too few in another, is that okay?
I'm okay with it, especially if it's for long-term bike parking,
I am too.
Great. Yeah,
Is anybody not okay with that?
we honestly took some bike parking out of the ski and bike shop in order to make room for ski lockers, which I think the comment references or the staff report asks what those things in the bike room are somewhere. Maybe it's in the black text. I don't know. But they're lockers for like skis.
Oh,
so
that's
that
neat.
people
Yeah.
who have skis can keep them not in their apartment.
Right,
Their boots
right.
and stuff. They can rent them or whatever.
Good.
But staff has something very specific at the end of 14. Will that be achieved?
Yes.
Meet the required minimum long-term bike parking without reducing interior common space.
Yeah, because we're already meeting it. It's just that there's a discrepancy in the two buildings.
Right, they're meeting it overall, not building by building.
All right.
They're basically doing it as a shared amenity.
Do you have the bicycle lockers? I think that there's a bicycle locker requirement because you have commercial space. Yeah, there's a closed locker required because of the commercial space on lot 13. So is that bike room with the lockers on lot 13?
It is.
Okay.
Do people have to rent the ski and clothes lockers?
I would think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks. So I
Maybe
think-
not the required clothes locker, if that's, I don't know how that works, but
We haven't gotten into some of the logistical aspect
Okay.
of it. Right now, we're just trying to make sure we can fit it
At
all
least
in.
we're beyond the pool.
I'm not
so why
saying I
don't
would
we-
mention the pool.
Yeah, why don't we just have a conversation because we're gonna have a short little cleanup conversation or cleanup hearing to finish up some other things. So why don't you and I talk about that closed locker requirement and we'll figure it out. The board doesn't need to be involved in the
Okay.
nitty-gritty of that.
So we're going to have public comment, but it sounds like we're moving toward continuing this hearing to a date that Marla will give us and understanding that that'll be a very brief cleanup meeting, maybe even with a draft decision.
Do my darndest.
Okay, I know you always do. So let's,
So can we just, there was one where I wrote down, I didn't get the board's feedback on, and because we said put a pin in it, so I just want to remind myself what that was. Something about,
traffic light.
no, it was glazing and garage openings, but I think we did circle back to that, so it's okay. And then traffic signal, yeah, we'll figure out what the city can do in terms of like warrants and monitoring, and we'll put that into the staff
Okay,
report for the
great.
next.
Great. So at this point, are there any members of the public who would like to comment? I don't see any here. Delilah, do you see any online? Okay. All right. So, do we need a motion to conclude this?
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll
so what date do we
continue.
want?
1, 2.
You guys like to get information 2 weeks before, right?
Yeah. How are you for June 7th?
So how many weeks from now is that?
It's a 5 Tuesday month, so it's 3 weeks from now.
So we would have 2 weeks to get
You'd have 3 weeks
3
to
weeks
get
to
stuff
get
to me.
the. What's the date? The 7th. I mean, I think I'm around. Yeah, Hey Tim, are you still on the call?
Yes, sir.
Is 3 weeks enough time for you guys to update the architecturals to include all the headers across all the elevations?
I don't know that we need that. We can just do that as a condition.
Oh, okay, great. So then we're good.
Okay.
So it's really the landscaping piece.
It's
And
the things that we left as open-ended tonight, not the things that the board said, yep, we understand that what you're planning. We'll just write those as conditions.
Then that should be a fine timeline.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's great.
All right, then I'll make a motion that we continue SD 2205, 255 Kennedy Drive, lots 13 and 15 to June 8th,
I think she said 7th,
7th.
I won't be, I don't think I'll be here.
and I won't be here either, so. Uh-oh.
I'll second that.
Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is carried. We will see you back here. Well, I know you're not moving right now, but we'll see you back here on this one on the 7th. Okay. The next one. Let me get to my document here. Okay. This is continued site application SP 22008. Pardon me, and conditional use application CU 2201 of O'Brien Farm Road, LLC, to construct a 52-space commercial parking lot on an existing 4.3 acre undeveloped lot for the use of tenants on the adjoining multifamily residential lots at 255 Kennedy Drive. So we have reviewed this before?
We haven't. We didn't have time, so we just skipped it the last time. So everybody needs to be sworn in and
Okay,
all that
so the
good
reason it
stuff.
says continued is,
Because we opened it and then continued it without
Okay.
discussion.
so, other than Evan and Andrew, how many other folks are testifying? Okay, all right, raise your right hand, please. Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
Yes.
Okay, good, thanks. So, give us a very, very brief introduction to this, please.
Sure. So this is the parking associated with the project that was just reviewed. That's located on an adjacent lot, which is outside of the Hillside Master Plan. So this was a lot that is part of the Eastview Master PUD project that the board has reviewed, but it's not part of Hillside. Conditional use for parking is allowed in this district and on this lot. And so the parking is being proposed just as a conditional use to serve the apartments because it worked out efficiently. So that's the brief history.
Okay. Let's start going through the staff comments. Any questions at this point? Okay. Well, there's a staff recommendation that is right below the little table with the setback data. And it says staff recommends the board require the applicant to provide this information as a condition of approval. I assume you have no problem with that.
It's about the front setback coverage.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll have to figure out what that is, but sure, yeah, we can.
So, staff comment number 1 is,
Well, I mean, but it's got to comply, right?
Right, but on a rough calculation, they're well under, so I don't have any concerns.
The only thing that crosses the setback is the drive, not the whole parking lot.
okay. So number 1, this is all about removing 4 spaces.
Yeah, do you have the plan that shows it's probably the most useful.
Yeah, so if I can give a little introduction, as Delilah gets it shown on the screen here. Oh no, I provided the wrong, oh no, I'm in the wrong folder. Sorry. So the plan they submitted does show the property boundary line and the zoning district line. And you can see that it kind of goes through that blue cyan line that's on the page right now, goes through a bunch of parking spaces, and then there's like a few to the left of it and most of them to the right. So that cyan line is what would happen if the board were to allow the regulations of the C1 R12 to be applied 50 feet into the R.
The C1 LR into the R12.
Sorry.
Elemento B.
So basically, if the board were to allow those regulations to be applied, then the parking left of that line would not be allowed and the parking right of that line would be allowed. And so that line goes through 8 or so parking spaces. But staff's position that we made in the report is that it goes through those spaces by like, so they could probably squidge them over a little bit to sort of check that box and meet that. And I'm looking at Scott and he's sort of nodding a little, but maybe a little uncertainty there. And then the spaces that are on the left of that line, but not within lot 15 would have to be removed entirely. So that's the 4 that we're referring to, is the ones left of that line, but on right of the thick black line. Can you zoom into that area, Delilah?
Sort of like a triangular section. Each of them gets descendingly smaller.
Right where your cursor is, yeah.
Oh, can I ask a question in regards to that, the cyan dotted line for the CLO or whatever district? How is that line mapped? Is that GPS mapped? Is that, meaning?
Yeah, it's a GIS line.
It's a GIS line, so it's not like we could say it's 6 inches in the wrong location and those are fine.
It's a good question as to what the accuracy of those GIS lines are.
They are, if you imported it from our GIS, they are the lines.
Okay.
There is this understanding that they were not perfect because they were not GIS when they were drawn, which is why the 50-foot allowance exists.
Got it. Okay. Well, we don't have like a 6-inch allowance for these,
Well, it'd be 50 plus 6 is what you'd be asking for, and the
I see.
planning commission has already
Oh,
allowed
right,
50.
'cause it's already shifting over. Got it. Okay.
So can you show us the 4 spots? I'm a little
I can draw on it.
lost.
The lower left of the actual parking lot.
So these.
Oh, I see them. Okay. Got it.
Between the black line and the cyan line.
Okay.
So I guess we were wondering if in the final plat, if we could adjust that lot line to include those 4 spots, because we could submit a plat to you that moved to the lot 13 lot line, and it'd be quite complicated because all the coverage tables will change and the lot areas will all change, and
Yeah, and we're pretty much ready. We just talked about that we're ready to close that with a couple little cleanup things. And if you want to amend your master plan and amend your final plat, it just feels like that's a
I
lot of
didn't
work
know, yeah,
for,
if it needed to amend the master plan to do that
to
as
change the
well.
area of involved lands. You have to amend the master plan. It's one of the 5 things. So it's a huge, I mean, maybe it's a huge project to be undertaken later. What if, sorry, I'm just kind of like having a conversation here, but what if you excluded those 4 spaces now and with the understanding that you would come back for them when you did something else? You know, roll it into whatever next bigger, more worthwhile project you have going.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
mean the lot line adjustment included in a future application?
Yeah, like when,
Okay.
you know, it's like when you go to the dentist, you only have them
Right.
do the little
Right.
thing
The
when
things-
you're already there
things
for the
that
big
hurt.
thing.
Right, okay.
I mean, we certainly don't want to create too big of a mess over these 4 parking spaces.
Right.
I think that's for sure. I mean, there's plenty of room for them, you know, further away. So, you know, we definitely don't want to lose 4 parking spaces. So if we remove them, we'd have to put them somewhere else. But
I think what we could do is move them and then amend it later to get those spaces back and have the additional spaces over them.
Where would you be moving them?
probably somewhere on the right there, right? Like extending that row along the curve
where,
by the
where there's a
dumpster.
little cut in.
Like here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think so.
Okay, so then they get wider. Sorry, I'm gonna nerd out on engineering stuff for a minute, but they have to be wider than the 9 at the mouth of them and back to 9 at the back. Is that how that works?
You do it radially, and then there'd probably be, we'd likely end up putting an island in at the first one and then add 4, just like you're drawn.
Okay, so that would be island. 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah. If that works for everybody.
Works for me. Anyone have a problem with that? Okay. Okay. Are we ready to move on to 2? So when
Yes.
you come back for final plat, will that be in the proposal?
Well, so
Yeah.
then there's the question, and I just want to make sure we're cool with Scott about squishing the ones over a couple, like a foot, because he was kind of making a face.
suspect we can do it. I mean, I think it's literally like a foot. There's unfortunately, sometimes moving something a foot has the same impact as moving it 20 in terms of like the changes it does, but it's hard for me to believe we couldn't make it.
Are you allowed compact spaces in that ratio?
There's no prohibition on the board. The board has the authority to allow modifications to the dimensions of parking spaces.
This is a great idea, because then we could just simply cut the striping short and it'd probably meet it, and we wouldn't have to.
Yeah, you'd have
would
8
have to-
spaces that were labeled compact.
We wouldn't have to adjust the landscape islands. or
Right, that's what I was just saying.
Okay.
Is that so? It makes me a little uncomfortable to not adjust the landscape islands to match, because then it's like they're not really compact spaces; they're just pretending to be compact spaces. If those spaces could be moved, Delilah, can you bring it up again? I'm going to draw on it again.
We could just bump the landscaping
Yeah,
out.
that's
to-
what I'm
to match
thinking.
it.
So bump the center line, bump that whole thing.
Well, but
Um,
then,
and-
then the spaces don't move
Make
though,
sure it
right?
works, but-
Because then if you bump,
Yeah, can you zoom back in and then I'll draw on it? Yeah. Oh, because are you in the?
bump
Annotate.
that other, like create a finger of that other one that goes into them or something, you're saying? Oh dear.
Click on your little.
Oh dear.
Just scroll wheel. So my thinking is, move the center line, move the landscape islands. So it's a little shorter, and then both spaces become, 20s instead of 22s or.
So
Or,
you're
sorry.
almost saying like it'd be compact on both sides then?
I think that's the only way to make it real compact. Otherwise, it's just like lip service.
Okay, well we can. Why don't we take a look at what?
I'll sketch something up.
You know.
Yeah, I mean, you
Yeah.
can see the topo if here too. It looks like you would have to squish it up, and that's probably uncomfortable because you're going to be more than 3-to-1 there.
Correct.
Yeah, I hear you.
So you're going to work on that. Okay, good.
Yeah, we'll figure out something, and then to the question, I mean, yeah, we'll update that across the plans so that they all are matching.
Okay, great. So number 2, I'm going to read this. Staff recommends the board enter into a discussion of what they will allow to be constructed. Wait a minute, have we taken care of this one already? Number 2, Marla?
Sorry, I was taking notes on what
I'm
just
sorry.
happened. Can you read it
I
out loud?
think we've.
I think it's all set.
I think we've taken. Okay, good. So let's move on to the next one. On page 5, this is about having a condition that there shall not be additional curb cut on lot 17 on O'Brien Farm Road or on Old Farm Road within 200 feet of the proposed curb cut as measured along the edge of the right-of-way. Are you okay with this?
So I mean, we talked about this, and I guess I was just a little bit like, why create a potential problem when we would have to request the curb cut anyway? So I guess I'm just, I don't have the plans for Eastview memorized. I don't know how that condition is going to interact when we move Old Farm Road and extend O'Brien Farm Road. I don't know where the curb cuts to those future commercial lots are going to be. And it just feels a little bit like we're making a restriction that like I can't even get a curb cut without being here proposing a project anyway. So, our take on it would be, let's review the curb cut when we have a project that needs one, and
So are you going to remove the curb cut?
there is no curb.
It's just the staff comment is about forbidding or prohibiting the curb cut within that dimension
I
in
see,
the future,
okay.
but we're not proposing any. So
Okay.
our take is, why prohibit yourself and limit your options
Okay.
when
Why?
there's no need to take
Borrow
action
trouble.
right now anyway.
Okay.
Well, is the 200 foot of an LVR for distance from?
Between curb cuts?
Right.
No, the LDR has access to PUDs should be 400, separate subdivision entrances, so it's earlier on that page. Separate subdivision entrances by a minimum of 400 feet on either side of a public street. So really it's 400 feet. But generally the board is pretty flexible with that. So that's why staff suggested 200 feet would be a
Well-
sort of fair waiver to grant them at this time.
But to build in a 200-foot waiver is now when it's not necessary. I'm thinking about it on the flip side of the issue.
Frank wants to make it more onerous on us.
I mean, we don't know yet because we don't.
Right. That's
That's kind of our
I don't
point.
think there's a need to take action on it.
Yeah, I think that the point here is to set the expectation of what, that this is not intended to be just like a loopy loop. Because the point is they're asking for something that normally the board never grants. The board doesn't grant approval for some roads and stuff on a lot without a development program. And they're asking the board to take on faith that this proposal for this parking is not going to preclude good development of this lot. And so the only thing that staff is asking here is that, okay, we're going to take it on faith that this is not precluding good development, but we suggest that we include one condition, which is don't put a curb cut within 200 feet, and everything else is still on the table. I mean, we could have said that, there should be a building between this, but it's just unusual to ask for this kind of thing without a full development
Well, so here's a
program.
question for you. If we don't put this condition in and they come in with something at 300 feet, we can say, you don't meet the 400-foot curb cut. So we are kind of giving them a 200-foot waiver from the get-go.
Yeah, that was my point.
Frank's not arguing for, Frank's arguing for more stringent than less.
Well, no, I'm
staff's
arguing
on-
for the possibility of more stringent than less,
Right,
that's all.
yes.
Until we see the thing, I guess,
Well, I guess that's our point is we can't put a curb cut on Old Farm Road without your approval. So to some degree,
What is the distance between Kimball and O'Brien Farm Road? Like meaning,
It's quite a bit.
it's quite a bit. So like if you were to put it, it's not like we have to worry about 400 feet not being able to meet that standard as a floating curb cut for lot 17.
right. I guess maybe I should
Between
have
Old Farm and Kimball.
I could preface what I said a little bit differently. Like, we have no problem with the 200-foot condition right now. I don't know what the problem might be, but despite my youthful complexion, I've been doing this long enough to know that these things can come back and just cause a problem. And I think we've been here with you guys before, just with some random thing that never seemed problematic, trying to get an amendment at the last minute to make something work. And all I'm saying is, like, why put ourselves through all that when we're going to have to be here anyway to get a curb cut approved? So why don't we just look at what we're proposing then, and you can say no or yes to the project. But, that was our take. But we certainly are not going to, contest the board's position if that's what it is. It's not that important. And certainly, in the future, you could always amend that. I mean, it's not written in stone. So
So what do you think, board?
I see staff's position in terms of we don't see any development plan for it, but I think staff was being pretty lenient in saying nothing within 200 feet. There's no way I think we would approve something closer than 200 feet. So we were sort of giving you a gimme. And if you don't want it, I don't think we need to give it to them. We just leave it as is. And when it comes in, we may hold you to 400.
yeah,
What's
well,
that?
Old Farm Road isn't even going to be there. I mean, it's going to
Right.
be in a whole new orientation. So how this condition interacts with a newly located Old Farm Road is also a question that I don't have an answer to. So
So it ain't broke, so we won't fix it. Is that what
sounds
we're?
good to
That's
me.
what I
Okay.
sort of said.
Mark stated my position.
Yeah. Yeah. And
All
once
right.
Frank stated it, I agreed with him.
Okay, good. All right, let's move on. Staff comment number 4. This is about the aggregation of interior parking. Didn't we already resolve this?
Yep.
Okay, good. Number 5. Staff recommends the board require the applicant to revise interior parking lot landscaping to meet the we've already resolved this too, correct?
Believe so.
So
Yeah, it's because we reviewed it under the last
Different
application, but
applications.
this is
Right.
same parking lot divided by the lot.
So, are you good with this, Marla?
if the board is okay with applying the same things that were discussed on SD 2205, I can handle that.
Sure, okay. Any objections from other board members? Okay, and I think that's it. So are we
We can close this.
good to close?
No,
on-
we need to see the revised.
Oh, the parking lot.
Parking, right.
Layout,
All right.
okay. So the same deal, come back, we'll continue this. Yep, and we'll have, a quickie. Will it be on the same date, June 7th?
Sure.
Okay, good. So let's take a break now and I'll ask for public comment. Are there any members of the public who want to comment on this proposal? Any online, Delilah? No? Okay, hearing none. I would entertain a motion to continue Site plan application SP 22008 and conditional use application CU 2201.
I move we continue those two applications to June 7th.
Thank you, Frank. Second? I'll second. Any discussion? All in favor? Did you have a question? You okay. All in favor of approving the motion, say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, it's carried. We will see you back here. Well, they will see you back here on June 7th.
Great. Thank you so much, guys.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Okay. Minutes. Bear with me while I call up the document. I'll have to get that after. Okay, the next application for us to review is continued preliminary plat application SD 2203 of Rivers Edge Building Development LLC for the 3.6 acre Park Road area phase of a previously approved master plan for a 450 acre golf course and 354 unit residential development. The planned unit development consists of consolidating 3 existing lots for the purpose of constructing 14 dwelling units in 2 family homes on 2 private roads at 1170 and 1180 Dorset Street. Who is here for the applicant?
David Burke from O'Leary Burke.
Hi, David.
Can you?
Anyone
Hi.
else?
Nope, I don't believe so.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to swear you in. Could you raise your right hand, please? Do you solemnly swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth under penalty of perjury?
I do.
Thank you.
So this is a continued application, and this one, if I can just give a little background, we talked about this. There were a lot of things where the applicant said, "Yep, we'll do this," but they were kind of big things. So the board felt like they should do some of those things before concluding the preliminary plat, and that's where we are today.
Okay. Okay. So, do you want to make some comments, David, or do you want us to just start going through the staff comments?
I wanted to make some comments because I think, it's been boiled down from 14 comments down to 3 comments
Right.
From the time that we were in initially. So everybody knows where the parcel is, Park Road. When you turn into Park Road, it's on the right-hand side. It abuts Dorset Street and Park Road. It was master planned for 15 units. The proposal is for 14 units. On August 3rd of 2021, we came in for sketch. There was some changes based on sketch, not just the full design plans, but changes based on the sketch hearing. And then as Marla mentioned, on March 15th of this year, we were back in for preliminary and got through a lot of the items. And both sketch and preliminary had a reasonable amount of discussion, mostly related around the roadways that were proposed. The March 15th was continued. We did a follow-up on April 13th, a memo to Marla. And in her May 4th report that you have in front of you, she acknowledges that most of the items were taken care of. Essentially, there's 3 items that I believe are left. One is the discussion on the ledge. One is on stormwater. And the final is on the rendering specific to the back of unit 3 and 4. So that's where it was. On the roadways, I wanted to touch on that. There was discussion at sketch and at preliminary as far as the configuration of these roads. We did submit and receive approval from Justin Rabideau, and we did have a traffic evaluation done, which stated no concerns. And staff has acknowledged that that's not a red item anymore. I think if it's okay, I'd like to talk about the rendering first and storm, because I think those might be pretty quick, depending on the board's comments. Is that okay?
So the rendering is number 3. So do you want to start there?
I'm just thinking you've already had kind of a long night, and I'm thinking we can get rid of those first two pretty quickly. So yeah, on item 3, there was quite a few renderings proposed or provided that you reviewed at the initial preliminary hearing, and they were well received. And the one main comment that was left was, can we see a rendering of the back of units 3 and 4 as you go north on Dorset Street? Basically, it's if the hedge that's not on our property, it's on the property line. If the 20-foot high cedar hedge were taken down, you're going to be able to see the back of those buildings. We don't control the hedge. So that's what that elevation intends to do, is to show that the back has a, kind of a front facade appearance. There's a porch, there's steps, there's a door, and basically, kind of two front facades to that building. So is that acceptable to the board?
So, you think yes?
Yeah, do we have discretion to accept that? Well, I mean, as long as we do, it looks fine to me, is what I was going to say. But if there's something other than, does it look okay?
Yeah, the board was concerned about how this would integrate with the surrounding neighborhood at the last hearing, and that is a criteria of review. So they provided a rendering.
Yeah, it definitely doesn't read as a back of a house.
Right, and I see Mark nodding yes, so that's always a good, our architect. Any other thoughts or comments? Okay.
I just had a question. Is that on the rendering? I mean, is that existing bike path? Is that what the people are running on there, or is that?
Yes.
Yes.
All right.
Yes.
And if you zoom in, that person in the background is rollerblading, which I laughed about. That was good.
Oh, okay.
Is that allowed?
That's good. Okay. So let's
So
go.
the second item that I think is pretty quick is units 9 through 14, which are on the lower road, and they're on the lower side. The land falls, basically this land falls away from Dorset Street. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about that when I address the ledge question. But the comment was, how are the roof drains? We've talked about the roof drains for 9 through 14 will connect to the storm system. The storm system is northeast of Unit 9. It shows on sheet 3, maybe the best. Anyways, it's in that appendage that's northeast of Unit 9. Yeah, so where you see the circular areas, the top of that storm pond is at elevation 401. The back of the units on units 9 through 14 are at elevation 404 to 406. So there's plenty of slope to have the roof drains from the back of those units connect over to the pond without any surcharge issue. There's 3 to 5 feet of elevation difference. What I think I would suggest to the board is that we would be agreeable to a condition that the back the roof drains from units 9 through 14 shall connect to the stormwater area. But I wanted to go over the elevations for you to, to prove that it's not an issue. But currently, the plan does not. Staff noted they couldn't find them. It's because it's not shown on there. So it should be a condition of preliminary that we include it with final, would be my recommendation.
So, Dave, sorry, I'm just zooming into this, and the board doesn't have the advantage of being able to zoom into the high resolution version. But
Yep.
the gravel wetland surface is at 399. The top of berm is at 403. Am I reading that wrong? And then the pretreatment forebay is at 404, but
You're not
obviously
reading
roofs don't
that.
need to be
You're not-
pretreated.
Right. So you'd have to look at the calculations together with it, but the 401 elevation is the elevation of the water level to meet the requirements. So from that elevation to the elevation behind, there's spot shots behind unit 910 of 405, 404 behind 1112, 406 behind 1314. So
Are you going to
there's
be able to get a pipe?
3 to 5 feet.
Are you going to be able to get a pipe with cover to that? I see that it has to cross a 400 contour.
Well, I don't, yes, I have no issues whether the finished grading gets tweaked a bit. My recommendation is that we're fine with the condition that the footing drain shall connect. We're comfortable that there's plenty of elevation difference. I don't think we need to get into the minutia of it if the board's okay with that as a condition.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying in a general sense. I guess part of the reason, let me just kind of back up. The part of the reason this is a concern of staff is because the changes from preliminary to final are supposed to be relatively minor. And if that ends up needing to be major to make this work, then the risk is that the preliminary doesn't look very much like the final.
Right.
The other piece here is that
I'll-
they are
I'll-
grading right to the edge of the wetland. So if those changes all of a sudden trip into wetland buffer impacts, that's another significant change between preliminary and final. So,
But it's their risk.
right. So if the board feels comfortable,
Th-
you know,
this
or
will-
wants to include a condition that if there are significant changes that either impact the wetland or the homes have to move, that they have to go back to preliminary, I think that would make us feel comfortable. I don't know how the applicant would feel about that.
What are your thoughts about that, David?
If the condition include if the homes had to move or there was wetland buffer impact as part of it, that's not an issue. This is a extremely minor thing. It will not be, it's very simple.
Okay, all right. Let's go back to the first staff comment, which is
Correct. So the ledge, I think, ledge is the biggest item that was hanging. And please accept, I hope you'll accept that we had a continued hearing. We provided the information that we could provide ahead of time. You know, not today or anything like that, but so we did provide information from test pits that were performed. Most of those test pits were performed by the previous engineer on this parcel for a different proposal. And then I went out to the site myself and tried to confirm down on the low side by auger, but if you're not going to hit ledge, you're going to hit boulders on some of this site. So I wasn't that successful before this hearing. But what I want to start with is the lay of the land. So very quickly from Dorset Street, the first 300 feet plus from Dorset Street, from the multi-use path as you head east, is at a gentle 3% slope. So it goes from an elevation 420 at Dorset Street path down to 410. And that 410 elevation, the plan up there, and again, I'll have to apologize because there's not elevation numbers on those contours. So even myself, I was looking between that sheet and sheet 3 of the plans. But that first 300 feet, which takes you to takes you to about the back of Unit 7-8. That's at an
Excuse me, David?
average 3%
David?
slope. And
Sorry to
Yep.
interrupt. You know, I think that the board, if Marla and I are reading this correctly, are okay with the ledge issues. Number one mostly speaks about the sight view, or what do you call it? Line of sight for the roadways. I think the ledge is not an issue.
Okay. Item 1 was the street trees.
Yes.
Unless other people
Yeah,
have questions
and I'm
about
sorry.
ledge removal.
No, I think that,
On item
ledge
1,
issue's
we
gonna
have
be
no
comment
issue
similar to the one
with-
across the street,
Right.
in terms of conditions and
Right.
review.
Yeah, so generally, I mean, we'll be looking for a plan, both a drawing plan and a written plan of how that ledge removal will be managed at final plat. And the board has experience writing conditions, and they'll write a very specific condition about what they're looking for. But I don't think there's anything that they're looking for right now at
No.
preliminary plat about ledge.
Okay.
So it's mostly the
Well,
roadway and the trees and the line of
Yep.
sight.
Well, I should have started with item 1 then, because no issue there. We'll make that change
Okay.
for final. And if the board did have any questions on ledge, I thought we had pretty much gone over that at sketch and at the first preliminary. And we understand that what we've provided to date is not enough for final, and are fine with similar conditions.
Okay, thank you. Board, do you feel that we have enough information on this proposal to close preliminary plat?
Well, I think.
I wanna
think
bring up
staff
an
was-
issue.
Sorry.
Go ahead,
I
Dan.
want to bring up, the Marla or Delilah, can you just show the general plan and zoom in on the crosswalk? When we talked about this before, I can't remember when it was. And again, just because I raised the issue doesn't make it important, but yeah, zoom in on the crosswalk there.
It's all about you, Dan.
Yeah, I know. I thought I had made a comment that the crosswalk should be a little more to the west, a little closer to the intersection, only because sort of like there's a mental thing of like when you're at an intersection, if you're going to look for a pedestrian, they're going to be closer to that.
Yep, and we were going to include that as a condition.
Also, this way it can align with the sidewalk that is across the street that's coming
Mm-hmm.
out of the other development.
Okay, so they just didn't fix it. I just want to be sure it
Yep.
is captured and the consultant remembers that to move that crosswalk.
Yeah, I wasn't on the hearing the first time, but I did see that in the minutes, Dan, when I reviewed
Okay.
for tonight, and we don't have any issue with that.
Okay, good.
Awesome, that'd be great. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Dan. Any other information we need before we close? Okay. So, I'm wondering if there are any members of the public who would like to make comments? And are there any online? No? Hearing none, I would recommend a motion to close this hearing.
I'll make a motion that we close ST 2203, 1170, and 1180 Dorset Street preliminary plat application.
I'll second that. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
All right.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much, David.
Thank you.
We'll see
Thank
you
you.
back here for final.
And then we were going to do minutes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, we are now going to do the minutes of the March 25th, April 5th, April 19th, and April 25th.
So I only included April 5th and April 19th in the packet. April 25th I didn't have, and March 25th was an oversight. So,
Okay, all right, good.
forthcoming.
Can we approve them together?
Sure.
Does anyone have any comments about the minutes of April 5th or April 19th? Questions? Okay. I'll move that we adopt the minutes of April 5th and April 19th.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? All in favor of approving those minutes, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, the motion is carried. Are you getting ready to go somewhere?
It looked like we were done.
No, we have one more project.
Okay.
Sorry.
I am going to be right back.
Sure, okay. Thank you, David.
Take a 3-minute break.
Take a 3-minute break, yep. Yeah, we still have the medical center project.
Okay.
Nice try, though.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it.
For about 3 or 4 years, I was just traveling all the time, so I was never here. So that's why they started the camera, and I would basically just call it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so I was just, so when they went to remote, I was like, wow, this is much
Right,
better.
yeah.
So I think this remote option is awesome.
No, it is nice. I think there's some good things that have carried over as far as flexibility.
Okay. Moving along, the next and final proposal for tonight is continued sketch plan application SD 2204 of UVM Medical Center to construct a 1.5-story, 84,000 square foot medical office with associated parking, equipment, and stormwater treatment on an existing undeveloped 13.5 acre lot at 119 Tilley Drive. Applicants, if you would like to come up front, you are welcome to do that.
Don, this is Jim. I'm recusing from this.
Okay,
This
Jim, thank
application.
you. Are there any other recusals
night.
or disclosures?
Night, Jim. Thank you.
Is it just you?
Gail, could you push the button on your mic? Perfect.
And it might be that it's hard to hear you with your mask on. Are you comfortable taking it off?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. So I know we spent a fair amount of time on this application last time you were here. And in the interest of time, I would like to recommend that we jump right into the staff report unless you have any brief comments to start with.
Can I just make a note? So they did submit some new materials, which we have available.
Okay.
I think that they are generally, I don't think there's no changes to the plan in the materials you submitted. It's more attempting to clarify questions and things.
Well, actually, that's not true. We did submit some sketches addressing some of the issues that we talked about last time.
Okay, so you did make changes in those to what the board has already seen?
We provided a couple of sketches, yes, that we were hoping to be able to
Yep, and
explain
So,
tonight.
so we have those, but are they, the question I'm asking is, are they different or just clarifying from what the board saw at the last meeting?
They're different because they're addressing the issues that we talked about and were asked to look at.
Okay.
And so we did bring them back, hoping to be able to talk to them.
Okay.
Okay, so Marla has provided a list of issues that the board provided feedback on. And I guess we need to go through those first, Marla, or should we jump to the question?
Yeah, it sounds like from what Gail's saying is that they, so staff comments 1 through 8 that are summarized, she may have some updates on those.
Okay, so let's walk through those. Staff comment number 1, regarding to the need. I guess it's regarding the need for a master plan. The applicant proposes to permanently conserve the undeveloped portion of the site, therefore sunsetting its development potential and obviating the need for a master plan.
Could I just make a quick comment? Because I think most of what was written as staff comments on the follow-up, we don't have any real issues with.
Okay.
We're hoping to go and talk with a couple of issues as you know, we came in with this, you know, as a voluntary for sketch plan because we were
Right.
looking for feedback. And we really need that feedback tonight so
Sure.
that we can be able
Okay.
to determine whether this plan is a go, no go in terms of whether there's issues with it from your perspective.
Okay.
So the real critical things, we have two critical issues that we're hoping that we can talk about. We know that there's 3 issues in the staff report that we didn't get to last time, but we'd really like to focus on these 2 issues first, if that is okay.
So let me just make sure I'm clear.
Sure.
All of the feedback, the list of board feedback on the first page of the memo, you're okay with?
Well, under staff comments for 2 and 3 regarding the wetlands and staff comment 4, those are the 2 issues that we want to talk about, that we've provided additional information on.
Okay, so you want to go to staff comment number 2 regarding the site layout
Sure.
resulting in, okay,
Right.
okay, go ahead.
All right, perfect. We did provide in our additional follow-up information on the Class 3 wetland delineation that was in our packet for both the 2 wetlands that are on the site. Wetland A, we're not impacting Wetland B, which is approximately 10,249 square feet on Lot 6. And we also provided the information from the wetlands expert that we had review that information to show that these wetlands are of very minimal value. Regarding that, we did relook at the front entry to the site. We've provided 2 sketches and they're attachment 5 and attachment 6 that we provided. I don't know if you can pull those up, if you can pull up number 5 first. So this is the existing layout entry on the site. And what we've done is we've shaded the Class 3 wetland area that we've impacted. And you'll note on the plan, the amount of wetlands that we're impacting is 5,640 square feet. So that was what our proposed layout on the plan that you've already seen. If you can pull up the attachment 6. We looked at shifting that road as much as we can out of the wetlands to still have the entry to the front of the building as well as to the remainder of the site work. With that, we would be putting in a retaining wall around the driveway where it's bordering the Class 3 wetlands, and the impact is considerably less. As you'll see, it's 1,590 square feet. So we're hoping that we can have a discussion about that. Is that reasonable? Is that acceptable? Obviously, the first layout works much better for us, but understanding that you have concerns about the Class 3 wetlands impacts, is this an acceptable layout for the impacts to the Class 3 wetlands?
Thank you. Board, thoughts? And Marla, any thoughts or questions?
I have a quick question.
Go ahead, Dan.
Does the main entrance, is that Tilley Drive there? It's off of Tilley, right?
Yes.
Does it have to line up with the parking lot on the south side of the road?
It's already there. So
Oh,
yes.
it's already there. That's why the curb cuts. All right, never mind. All right.
Because that's the entrance to the Red Barn
Deli.
When the Red Barn,
Does the entrance to the Red Barn Deli? Does the entrance to the Red Barn Deli impact the wetlands?
No,
I don't believe
Oh, it
so.
didn't when it was built.
No.
did not. No.
Did you have a question, Mark? No, okay. So board, what do you think about this reduction of wetland impact by about 80%?
It's a 4,000 square foot
Yeah.
reduction, roughly.
Okay. And Marla, what, do you have any questions?
The board really dug into this at the last meeting. You
Yeah.
know, this was the board's idea, so I don't want to take anything away from that.
Well, I think I kind of was pushing for this, and I'm guess I don't want to defer to staff or ask staff, but I mean, is it really at the board's discretion at what we sort of establish as minimal invasive to allow?
Yeah, so the standard is the minimum impacts necessary to achieve the development.
Right.
And so, you know, the board had said, well, we don't think that this is the minimum necessary. We think you can do better.
Yep.
And they did.
I would tend to agree with that.
Okay.
You know, I mean, obviously, I think, you know, we're looking at it like this, you know, not like this. And you pretty much did what we asked, looking at it like this, you know.
Well, we explained the bigger.
Yes,
The
but I
two chief
meaning
ones.
you didn't take a pen, broad stroke revisit it. You sort of said, how can we fix this one issue that we identified as a board, you know? And I agree. I think that this is sort of like the minimum impact that can be done that still achieves what you're trying to do with the project. And, you know, short of other issues, I would support this solution for this amount of impact.
Any other comments from the board?
Yeah, I would just echo that and say that I think you know, these are new LDRs, so it seems like you guys took that and minimized that, and so now we can, you know, this shows us more that this is the minimal, and taking into account all the other challenges you guys had with the site as well. So also just want to say appreciate that this probably took a lot of more tooling on your guys' end, and it looks good. So
Thank you.
Any other comments? Okay, Gail, what was the other staff comment you wanted to talk about?
So still on this front entry piece, one of the issues, and it's actually your staff comment. Staff comment on the proposed entry facing the front or the street.
That number 11.
And so we went and looked at that, and we have a sketch which is in. Oops, hold on. That is attachment 7. If you can pull that up. And I am going to have Thomas Morris of E4H Architects come and explain that entry piece. We also provided.
So just for clarity, we're talking about staff comment number 11 here.
Yes.
Yes.
Not 9, okay.
No, 11.
9. Yeah, I think it's 9.
Yeah, because 9 and 10 looked pretty basic. I think 11 was the big one I saw that we had to continue discussing.
I think I wouldn't diminish either of those two. But.
Well, I didn't mean to diminish, but
Okay, so let's move to 11. We'll come back to those. And I'm sorry, I'm going to have to swear you in.
Certainly.
No, sketch plan.
Sketch plan? You're
Would it be
absolutely
great
right.
if you could introduce yourself?
I'm Thomas Morris with E4H Architects.
Okay, thanks. Tom or Thomas?
Either one.
Okay. Tell us your comments.
So our feeling on the entrance facing the west part of the building is that, you know, it's a fundamental element that wayfinding is pretty critical to any healthcare facility. There are studies that indicate wayfinding can reduce stress for patients who are arriving at these buildings, and especially surgery centers.
Did you say wayfinding?
Wayfinding, yeah, finding your way to the building.
Okay, thank you.
Right now, our canopy has to be positioned on the west side of the building due to the way our drive has to come to the building, and the sloping grade on the south part of the building lot. So, aside from all the therapeutic and healthcare related points, fundamentally, just even getting the cars to queue up underneath the drop-off canopy and having the entrance on the west side of the building is far greater. It allows the patient to pull the cars up a little bit further, get out, progress into the building, allows 3 or 4 cars to queue up, you know, in the morning hours when we're seeing a heavy patient load. If we move that to the south side of the building, one, you don't, if you see the door as you approach, then you're going to know where it is. If you drive up to the building and get out, you're not going to know where it is and you're going to be lost. It's kind of like getting dropped off at the airport and having to walk to the side of the airport to enter it. You wouldn't know where the doors are unless you saw them when you approached. We can extend the canopy out a little bit, but then it pushes all of our handicap parking a little bit further away from the building. And we wouldn't want that parking close to the building, dividing where you get dropped off and where you enter the building between parking. So we really feel like the entrance needs to remain on the west side of the building. We have a lot of glazing on the south side that kind of replicates building frontage, which would kind of accomplish your streetscape philosophy. So that's what we believe is best for the building, based on the site restraints.
If you could pull up our attachment 9, we have a perspective sketch of what that looks like with the entrance on the west side.
West side, yeah.
This is what we've in our plan that's proposed right now.
And those are handicap spots right there.
Correct.
Correct.
And this is the view from the,
This is kind of looking north. Kind
so
of a
from
little
the
bit north.
south,
From the
from the
south.
driveway
south.
entrance?
Yeah, yeah. So once you make that curb cut at the Red Deli, you would kind of swoop around, and this is how you would approach the building.
Okay.
That's pretty nice.
So it is a requirement for a healthcare facility to be dropped off underneath the canopy. So if we did put the entrance on the south side, if you were approaching it and you saw the door, you might stop because you see the door, and you would let your family member or whoever you're driving to the facility out, and then they would walk to the door. Then the next car would be even further away if they queued up behind them.
So Delilah's drawn a little triangle. That's sort of like where that's what, there's like a word for when. Yeah.
Say that again. I
In
didn't.
that perspective, yes.
Yes, that's the view you're looking at right there. Yeah.
Apex of the pink triangle.
But that's, if you're standing there, that's what you'd see.
The other thing is that the patients enter in this doorway, but when they leave the facility, they're going out a door on the other side of
Right.
the canopy. So that also becomes an issue when the entrance is on the south-facing facade, because then when visitors go, or not visitors, patients who are being dropped off, when somebody goes and parks and then comes from the parking lot back to the building, the first door they're going to see is the exit door, not the entry door. So it's
You're right. In fact, we
logistics and
we purposely
wayfinding.
pushed the exit door back from the front of the building on the north side, so that people would not see it as easily as this door and not be confused, because Gail's right. You're going to drop off your family member at the door. You're going to see it, then you're going to go park, and then
Right.
you're going to have to walk back.
Sure.
So
Okay. Questions from board? Comments?
Can I ask the staff, is this a site layout standard, or is this a sort of like pedestrian orientation, building orientation to the front?
Oh, you're
standard?
gonna make me pull up the last packet because I don't remember.
I only ask because I think that the rendering is very nice, and it definitely presents to the street, with that sort of pedestrian plaza and the way the building is designed. And I get why the circulation and canopy entrance. Are you saying that you don't want to do the canopy extension and push the ADA parking, or is the sketch that we just saw something you're willing to do to sort of more meet this standard? That
we just think that if the entrance was flipped to the south, if it had to be there, we would want to try to bring the canopy with it, so we have a greater chance of more people being dropped off under cover, as much as possible.
So
I think we would prefer to have the plan as this rendering shows and as it's been presented.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That overall works the best, both interior and exterior for the
Yeah.
project. So that's what we're would like to do. I don't believe there's a condition, I don't believe there's anything specifically in the regulations that require the building to be facing, the entrance to be facing to front to the road, but I believe that's something that's in draft regulations now. So I don't, again, this is how it works on the site with all the constraints we have.
Okay, so are we good with this, board?
Can I just take I'm not gonna object to anything anybody's saying, but I just wanna take a moment to remind both the board and the applicant that sketch is non-binding on both parts, right? So the board can provide guidance and it's helpful and it's useful and they generally stick to it. And the applicant can say, we're going to make a building look like this, but neither is required to 100% toe the line to those to those things.
Unlike preliminary plat to final plat.
Well, this would be a site plan only.
Oh,
So it's
that's
one
right,
and done,
okay.
But yeah.
Right. Okay, Mark, go ahead.
No, I think it works fine. I mean, the building architecture, even though it's functionally west drop off and all that, it presents to the street as well.
Yeah.
Even if it's not functionally presenting, it's not
Right.
functional to the street. It's design oriented to the street as well. So.
Sure.
I have a question about, not directly relevant to this issue, but about the use of the building as an outpatient surgery center. What does that mean? Is there actually surgery suites inside the building?
There are 8 operating rooms in the building, you're correct.
Okay,
Yeah, they
but not,
presented on that at the last hearing.
but outpatient means
You don't stay overnight.
you don't
typically.
stay overnight, okay, right.
Okay. We ready to move on or move back? I'd like to go back to 9 and 10.
Yep.
So Steph?
What, if we can just go, sorry, I'm not trying to overstep your authority here, but the other, so that was one of our issues was that whole front entry, and the other one had to do with staff comment number 4 regarding the proposed future roadway on lot 2. And we did provide the final plat for the Tilley Drive subdivision that shows the proposed 100-foot right-of-way easement for the entire road from Tilley Drive to the Eastview or to the O'Brien development, as well as the conditions for the approval for that project. I believe this. So that said, we're not. Lot 2 doesn't have anything to do with our project. We understand, that the roadway is something you're working on. We did look at the sketch that you provided on page 5 in the staff report that shows the class 2 wetlands roughly on lot 2 and where the proposed road coming from the O'Brien development and how it would, potentially connect onto that lot. And that little sketch on page 5 appears to represent what's there roughly from what we know of it. Again, we're more than willing to work with the board and with the city and with Pizzagalli Properties if that roadway needs to adjust and swing towards the northeastern property line for lot 6 in order to make that work from where the proposed road on the Eastview development, the center line of that road to the corner of the property line on lot 6 is roughly, I think it's 120 feet. So there is room for that to adjust there if that needs be for that roadway B. But from what we can tell, it looks like it won't be impacting the class 2 wetlands. It may impact the class 2 wetland buffers. But again, that's not something that we're working on. So we just want to make that clear that we're willing to work with the city and with Pizzagalli Properties on that in terms of any adjustment that may need to happen on the northeastern part of Lot 6 on that property line.
Do we have latitude for allowing incursion in the buffer to this extent? This is a class 2 here, is that right, or
Right,
is that a little more stringent on invading the buffer?
it is. There is restricted infrastructure encroachment. As Gail said, this roadway is not being proposed by them. This is an official map roadway. So the LDRs require that roads on the official map are constructed when development on the parcels involving those roads occurs. You can kind of see the cyan line on the plan. That is the property boundary. So the question here, and I'm rehashing a little bit because Frank wasn't at the last meeting. The question here is whether the roadway shown by the long and 2 short dashed lines can actually go where it is on the official map because of the wetlands, and if it's going to need to be squidged over. To be honest, I was kind of trying to find where this was in the plans while Gail was talking, so I'm going to listen to the tape and hear what she just said again. But it sounded like she was saying that this project, since they don't intend to use the back of the site, has some flexibility to allow some of that right away if it's found to be necessary at a later time.
Some of that squidging, as you say.
That's one of my favorite words.
Yes.
Well, can't this be, between now and preliminary plat, can't this be the subject of back and forth between staff and the developer?
Again, we're not proposing anything on Lot 2. Lot 2 is not our lot. We're proposing on Lot 6.
Right, but Lot 2 and Lot 6 are under common ownership, which is why this is even coming up. Yeah, it's a really thorny issue because it's an official map issue, not a this development issue, but it becomes a this development issue because it's on the official map.
Well, but so our official map shows an incursion into the wetland buffer on our official road. So that's the problem we created, right?
Right. And
Now-
that's why we're having this conversation, because we don't want to preclude construction of connections.
Well, right now, it's also showing it aligning with the road on the development to the north. But what if that road gets built before this road ever gets planned, and then we go to look at building this road and find that the wetlands do impact it, and there's no way to make that connection with the alignment?
Mm-hmm.
Well, it doesn't look like
It seems a
that.
little short-sighted
Mm-hmm.
in the long run
Yep.
when it's an official city road.
Right. So we have a final plat application for that road that's, sorry guys, we'll make sure we get to your stuff.
Project issue.
North of the red line.
Yep.
That is going to be in front of the board pretty soon. And so.
Is that part of the O'Brien development?
That's the O'Brien Eastview development. That final plat has been submitted. It's not yet scheduled. And we'll be talking about that issue at that time.
So what do we need to do to move this forward?
If the board feels satisfied, again, I admit I wasn't 100% listening. But if the board feels satisfied with the testimony Gail just provided, then you can move forward.
Understanding that it might have to have some flex as we go forward.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't think they need to prove it. I think we need to work with it and have, as we said, we've got, what's the technical term? Squiggle room?
Squidge.
Squidge, yeah. So,
Well, it looks like the city created the problem.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so.
Right, and we don't want the development review board working at odds with the official map. We want to try and make those two processes as
Right.
compatible as is available to us.
Okay. Are there any other comments in this staff report that you want to comment on?
I think we just would like to, the few items that we didn't get to address at the last hearing, those 9, 10, and 11.
Didn't we?
Well, we just did 11.
We just did 11, right?
So 9 and 10. Yep.
And so I guess under 9, the recreation path, we did provide information on this, that we did look at how to try to have some type of a rec path come onto the property and try to access over to either out to Tilley Drive or over to Old Farm Road, and we had grading and stormwater drainage issues, but also more importantly, we had concerns from the neighbors. And at this point, we proposed on our plan to just have a path coming on the northern part of the site and kind of ending in a proposed little overlook. And we're willing to work with the city and the neighbors on this to try to come up with however something could work for a future rec path. But because this project is so important in terms of our schedule and moving forward, we would like it to not hold up this project, but we'll commit to working with the city and the neighbors on that.
Okay. Does that work for folks? Okay, number 10. This is about accessory structures and the placement and screening.
Yes. So on our site plan, that's under attachment 8, if you wouldn't mind pulling that up. What we've done is we're willing to add proposed screening and use a lot of evergreens for along the eastern property line, and we did add some additional land proposed plantings along that eastern property line where the MEP equipment is located.
Can you kind of, I know we've gone through this already, but we've got a couple minutes. Delilah, can you zoom into that whole area where on the sort of middle right, bottom right of the parking lot?
Almost in between the two gravel wetlands is where most of it's concentrated.
No, up.
Yeah.
Right there where your mouse is.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff.
Yes. So we included in our packet originally, we have a generator that's kind of in that island between the drive and the parking area. Then we have the 2 chillers that are in the green space between the driveway and the property line. We have the oxygen farm and a potential fuel cell equipment all there. And those, as we have explained in our comments in this, in our project narrative, these are all critical and all need to be in relative proximity to the building. And the examples that we provided pictures of are either from the Fanny Allen Hospital, which is the outpatient surgery center right now for the medical center, and or they're from the medical center campus in Burlington, to give you an idea of what they look like. The only other piece is we do have is it a transformer that's out along the southern property line.
More adjacent to Tilley Drive.
Right.
Should be a small box just in the...
Right, which is kind of out down in the... It's off to the...
little white box to the right.
Yeah, right there.
And what's the height of that? Just regular 3 feet kind of guy?
I think we showed a typical transformer as 3 by 3 by 3, I think. But you see them everywhere. They're that green color. Usually there's some plantings around them.
So some of this equipment that was on farther up on the screen, that stuff's on the order of like 20 feet tall.
The oxygen farm, that tends to have taller, I think they're 15 to 20 feet tall.
Okay. And then the chillers are like 50 feet long by
10
how high?
feet.
10 feet high.
Yeah,
So we're talking big stuff here.
They are big, and we thought your intent was more to screen them, not so much from our parking lot, but from maybe a public way that's to the east.
Yeah, I just want to make sure the board is clear on like the magnitude of these things.
Right. But what's the alternative?
To put them inside some sort of full height enclosure, you know,
Okay,
and I
yeah.
don't know that.
we have looked at a variety of different places on the site while this whole project was being designed, and it's pretty tricky.
Yeah.
Just due to the grades and due to being in close proximity to the building to get
Sure.
everything to work. So that's the real issue.
What is
I have
the
a
board?
question about the wind. I have a quick question about the windmill.
Go ahead.
How tall is that windmill, and are there any concerns about ice throw?
About what? Ice?
The
Ice throw?
It's not a modern windmill. It's like a
The
ye olde
decorative one that was
timey.
been up there for years.
Yeah.
It's
Oh.
an existing windmill on site,
Yeah.
and the neighbors, one of the neighbors, actually several of the neighbors asked that it be kept. So it's being relocated from where it exists today to the island in the parking lot.
Okay.
It's roughly 24 feet tall. We had our structural engineer go out and look at it, so we're going to relocate it more as a focal point and a feature.
I think it should
rather
count
than
towards the landscaping budget.
Say that again, Dan?
I think it needs to count towards the landscaping budget as an architectural or historic amenity.
Any other questions, concerns,
I
comments?
have, what are the construction lines, the dash lines inside the building outline? What are they?
It's showing the lower level. So it's a partial lower level and then a full first floor. So the dashed line is showing you the basement footprint.
Okay.
The building is kind of built into the hillside. It's a sloping site. It's about, I think it's 25, 30 feet drop between the west and the east. So you walk in on the upper level at grade on the entry, and then the lower level
Then you drop down.
is you drop down, and that's accessed for in the back of the building on the north side.
And it's a mostly support and mechanical space. That's why we have that equipment located just to the north of that space, because it can directly feed into all those utility rooms in the basement.
And it's also your loading dock area.
Loading dock.
So the question here in staff comment 10 is, what does the board, given the magnitude of this equipment, what is the board going to be looking for at site plan in terms of screening? It looks like they've shown a line of deciduous trees. Is the board going to be looking for, a fence? Is deciduous trees, coniferous trees? Is what they've shown okay?
We proposed evergreens there.
Oh. Okay.
Because if they're deciduous, they're not going to screen in the winter.
Right.
So, I mean, obviously, part of it goes to functionality, in terms of the need for them in proximity for the infrastructure. And part of it is going to go towards aesthetics, which is probably secondary, but still important. And I guess one question I have would be, if there's a way to, I know they're sort of in the general area on the site, but if there's a way, I understand the generator seems like it's in a pretty good location. It can be chain link fence, it's got some shrubs around it. You can probably put some more on the parking lot side and things like that. I'm wondering if like the O2 farm, the future fuel cell area, and the chillers could be even more consolidated so that you can do some landscaping on all four sides to break it up, and to probably you need to put it into a more secure area so you don't have like 4 different areas that have chain link fence around them.
Well, the reason the oxygen farm is close to the driveway is that has to be accessed with trucks.
Sure, but I'm saying if you slid it down so that, and then move the trees that are between the O2 farm and the future fuel cell area on either side of it, so that, you're putting all of them in one area, and you don't, are each of them also going to have to be chain link fenced for security purposes?
I don't believe so.
Okay.
I think it's just the oxygen farm may, but I'm not even sure if that's proposed to have a fence around it. But the generator is the main thing that has the fence around.
Okay.
There are some separation issues that are required.
Okay.
We
That
probably
was
wouldn't want to
kind of my
put the fuel
question.
cell next to the oxygen farm for logical
Yep.
reasons.
Okay.
Or the
Yeah.
overhead power lines. The oxygen farm has to be a certain distance from those.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right, we've
Okay.
really.
Then I think
You've thought all this through,
I
obviously.
think site plan review after sketch, looking at some additional screening to them just to sort of soften them up, because obviously your sample images are pretty stark, so anything you can do to soften the image from, the parking lot and from adjacent developments.
We can definitely
Yeah.
look into that and do more
Yeah.
of that.
Recognizing they are functional and it is a, hospital setting, so.
the other thing is they are on the lower part of the site, so they will have less impacts on the neighbors, which is something that we did consider as well.
So we are approaching the witching hour.
Yes.
And my question to the board is, do you think we've covered everything for sketch? And my question to you is, do you need any more feedback from us?
Thank you so much. We appreciate your taking the time to go over all these issues with us that we really needed answers on. I believe we are all set with addressing the major critical ones we wanted, but
Okay.
everything else I think we've discussed. And
Okay, good. Board, we set?
All set.
Okay. Do we need public comment? Probably. Are there any members of the public who would like to comment? And do we have any online? No? Okay.
Well, I mean, we should give it a second. We only just asked.
I know. And we don't need to, we don't need a motion to close the sketch. Okay. All right, hearing none, I guess that's it. Thank you for coming back. We'll see you back here at a later date.
yes, thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the time and helping to get some clarity on these issues for us.
Pleasure. Take care.
Thank you.
Is there any other business?
Motion to adjourn.
Hearing none, I think we can adjourn.
All right.
Now
Night,
you-
guys.
Good night, Dan. Thank you.
Frank,
Recording
now you can
stopped.
go.
This is game 2 of